What war crimes do the good guys in media commit against the so-called bad guys? In Stargate Atlantis, the goodies capture a wraith and perform medical experiments on him. A recent example I can think of is in Without Remorse, where you're supposed to believe that Michael B. Jordan is making a heroic one-man stand during a Black Ops mission in Russia, until you realize the Russian police and soldiers are responding to what appears to be a terror incident rather than the movie's villain blowing himself up, and have no clue who's shooting at them. Is it really Tom Clancy IP without a few war crimes sprinkled in under the guise of heroism? Oddly enough, in Red Storm Rising, he has an American airman get captured and treated well by his Soviet interrogator, and he ends up talking quite a bit. Shows how well that technique works compared to torture. You remember the time the Powerpuff Girls beat up Mojo Jojo while he was in jail doing absolutely nothing wrong? The girls should be tried for what they've done to Mojo, seriously. There's an episode in some of the more recent Powerpuff Girls where Bubbles gets a bad haircut and I think something happens to her face, so she feels ugly and decides she wants to be evil. She goes to Mojo Jojo's lair and asks to team up, and he's like, "No, I'm literally relaxing. I don't want to do evil stuff with you right now, Bubbles." But she keeps insisting, so he's like, "Fine, okay, whatever." And then Blossom and Buttercup come and mess up Mojo Jojo, and Bubbles switches back to their side. Then they blame the situation on Mojo Jojo and call him ugly. It was so screwed. Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Everything. When I remembered that General Grievous staged an attack on a medical facility, I began to wonder if the writers had a checklist of all the Geneva Convention rulings they could fit into the show. The Republic commits war atrocities all the time, and so do the rebels. Star Wars is full of war crimes on all sides. In the Star Trek Discovery pilot, they booby-trap dead bodies, which is a war crime. Yes, maybe in the future the Geneva Convention has been updated, they actually name-check that it still exists in Episode 3 of Season 1, but you'd expect it to change for the better, not give the okay for the same tactics extremists use today. They also try to murderize a whole planet, but compromise to overthrowing the legitimate ruling government. In Star Trek Enterprise, Archer threw a guy into an airlock and decompressed it until the guy talked. James Bond commits multiple acts of torture and frequently threatens unarmed people with assault or even death. This is played almost as satire in the later movies, where he's portrayed unambiguously as a complete sociopath. In a sense, that's getting back to the source material. The original Bond in Ian Fleming's works was portrayed as being cold and ruthless, and quite possibly a sociopath of sorts. Yes, the narrator actually enjoys that the Craig films do portray Bond as someone who should not at all be emulated rather than a cool role model. Too bad that so many people failed to see that. People are dumb. Isn't Ender's Game about tricking a child into committing xenocide? Yeah, but the terrible psychological effect that it has on Ender is the whole point of the book, something the movie sadly neglected. The end of the movie takes place 2/3 of the way into the book. A huge plot arc of that series is Ender trying to figure out how to deal with his own internal grief at what he's done, while simultaneously being praised as a hero. Well, the second book is all about trying to make things right by finding a new planet for the Queen. Star Wars. The Republic is literally creating human beings with short lifespans, puts control chips in their brains, and indoctrinates them to feed them into the meat grinder. That is 40k levels of dark. Also, everyone has way more than necessary sapient droids that get treated like slaves at best. The basic battle droids could probably beat the Turing test, and even the Jedi kill them basically for fun. The droids' right issues are hilariously unexplored. Every droid you see blasted is at least semi-sentient and held in slavery. They're clearly able to feel emotions and pain. Torture is typically a default. The protagonist doesn't have time to play by the rules, so he tortures info out of the person. Hollywood loves to show that torture is the only way to get info out of someone when it's actually not only a war crime, but the least reliable method. Only Captain America used the steak and potatoes method. In the last Hunger Games movie, didn't the good guys drop medical supplies, only just for half of them to be bombs to make the bad guys look bad? Yeah, they committed a really nasty false flag attack against children. To be fair, it's a major plot point that turns Katniss against them. She even shoots the head of District 13 afterwards. Also, her sister was not old enough to be a volunteer army medic according to District 13, who was so militant about rules. Coin was a control freak, so she would have had to specifically made the decision to send Prim, and also been aware of the tactics they were going to use. Inglorious bastards. I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to scalp people. This is a good answer because they actually are in a war, and a lot of answers here are just regular crimes. The protagonists in that film scalp dead and dying soldiers, they execute prisoners of war, and disfigure survivors. Even Landa has a line near the end, during the make a deal scene, something like, "As of right now, your plan, which some would call a terror plot, is still a go." I mean, he's got a point. The plan is to essentially assassinate the German high command by bombing a theater full of citizens. Fake surrendering and harming someone after they've surrendered. Every other damn action movie. I remember when I first played Skyrim, this guy said, I yield, and stopped attacking. I held back, thinking this was some sort of nifty game mechanic, and then he went right back to trying to kill me. I was annoyed. A lot of good guys flirt with or outright commit torture in interrogation sessions. Remember, it's considered bad to physically attack someone when they can't fight back, no matter what the circumstances, and in the real world it usually doesn't work. Torture makes people say whatever the torturer wants them to say, not what they actually need to hear. People who don't know anything will come up with the most elaborate stories to make it stop. Not to mention guerrilla forces are quite selective with information to prevent spies and defectors from gleaning anything useful. Heck, I wonder if a guerrilla commander ever deliberately gave a fighter false info to let him be captured and have the false information tortured out of him so the opposing forces would walk right into an ambush. In Community, Pierce Hawthorne fakes a heart attack to shoot one of City College's stormtroopers, then disguises himself in the guy's armor and shoots the remaining stormtroopers to win a paintball tournament for Greendale. Whenever somebody fakes a surrender, it's disturbing how many people writing back to me don't know that you can't fake a surrender. Obi-Wan Kenobi is a master of the fake surrender. I just got past Kong Prell in the Clone Wars, and Obi-Wan did the fake surrender at least 3 times by then. That's Season 4. There are so many war crimes in the Clone Wars, and those are just the ones shown. That scene in Saving Private Ryan where they shoot the unarmed Czech conscripts. That was literally against the rules of engagement, and a damn tragedy. Could have happened in real life too. Imagine being forced to fight for Germany, and just when you think it's over, you get killed by your perceived saviors. Perfidy, which is a fancy word for surrendering only to whip around and start killing your captor. It's seen a lot in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Inglorious bastards. Beating surrendered combatants with a baseball bat is not great, to be honest. I love the scene in which the Germans watch a propaganda film in Shoshana's theater, and they're all cheering and clapping like idiots at the obviously romanticized Third Reich hero mowing down ally soldier after ally soldier, when you realize you, as a viewer, have been doing essentially the same thing. Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars is notorious for falsely surrendering to the Separatists. He did this in Season 7, Episode 9 to lure the tactical droid out of hiding on a battlefront before the Siege of Mandalore. Given a lot of his conduct, we can grant Anakin the right of master when it comes to war crimes. False surrender, ridiculously common in Star Wars, World War II films, and middle schools. This regards cop movies more, but I've recently been rewatching some absolute bangers from the 80s, including Lethal Weapon, Tango and Cash Action, Jackson, and it's hilarious how insane and borderline sadistic the cops are. Have you ever considered what a psycho John McClane is to kill some guy, put a Christmas elf hat on him and write, "Now I have weapon we can't say on YouTube, ho ho ho," on his shirt in Die Hard? It's such a funny 80s trope that cops were supposed to be these rule-breaking fanatics. Don't forget Die Hard 5 when he causes an accident, sucker punches a guy and steals a car. I am dying over here at the fact that half this group is just Star Wars-based stuff. Yeah, honestly, the narrator hasn't even seen most of the Clone Wars, but even from the original films, he can remember a few moments where the goodies go from being surrendered to pulling a bunch of weapons and killing the enemy while they're surprised. Every scene with a flamethrower. Even the 2017 My Little Pony film is guilty of this. I was actually going to blame you for false information, but I just did a quick search that it was in fact banned in 1919, but I thought it was 1978 because that was when the US stopped using them. The very existence of flamethrowers proves that sometime, somewhere, someone said to themselves, "You know, I want to set those people over there on fire, but I'm just not close enough to get the job done," said by George Carlin in 1984. Where they dress up as soldiers of the evil empire and proceed to kill enemy soldiers who think that they're on their side. Looking at you, Star Wars. Although, to be fair, if the enemy I was facing had a planet-destroying laser, that would be a crime I'd happily commit. Every time they kill a minion. Nobody cares about the ninja army getting slaughtered, but the moment the big bad steps in the room, suddenly everyone has a conscience. Or they're storming the evil fortress or business or mansion and some former veteran is just working security there to try and feed his family. He has no clue the boss is some supervillain bent on world domination or has kidnapped the protagonist's kid. Crap, the authorities don't even know. So from his perspective, there's just some armed psycho taking out his co-workers and friends, so he's doing his job, and now he's dead or permanently disabled because the hero has to be a hero and not say anything about his family or the evil plot and not make any attempts to spare lives. Superheroes who destroy half the town before the villain even does anything. There was actually a Superman comic where he heard the news about a hurricane that destroyed houses because they weren't built to the standard, and that the government was going to build new houses for the displaced residents and ensure the new ones were up to code. So he flies off to a nearby poor district in town, told the residents to get out, and proceeded to destroy the entire district to ensure the government would build them new, better houses. Yes, that was an actual comic. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I don't care if they've got magical superpowers, a lot of the good guys are using child soldiers. Spider-Man's 15 in Homecoming. Attack on Titan has them all training at the same age, and they're fighting monsters well before they're 18. I think in Spider-Man's case, Tony realized, and that's why he sent Peter home. In Attack on Titan, it's literally life or death. In XCOM and XCOM 2, you commit some serious atrocities. Collateral damage in spades inside of cities, grenades and rockets going astray and killing civilians, acid, poison, and incendiaries are all utilized because screw the aliens pain, and the Reaper faction literally eats aliens. Plus you can go some dark directions in the lore if you want. This is all excused as, aliens never signed the Geneva Convention, so it's fine. Then you learn most of the aliens are basically either part human or forced into doing what they did. Yeah, that felt really blatant. Especially with the, we'd never modify our soldiers like those insurgent people do, that's grotesque. You then go on to upgrade your soldiers with 6 times more upgrades than the enemy have, and basically take a soldier's head and put them onto a robot body. They kill all the bad guys, as in the soldiers and mercenaries and other goons working for the bad guy, but they can't kill the bad guy because he needs to be brought to justice. Oh, that's not a war crime, it's just kind of stupid, and it's a dumb trope of storytelling. Mostly anything the bad faction does that makes our blood boil. It's somehow okay for the heroes to torture them, kidnap their relatives and stuff, it's only wrong when the bad guys do it. The human brain is funny. There's an individual, let's call him A. Skywalker, no, that's too obvious, let's call him Anakin S. His list is a little intense. Let's see if I can get everything. There's false surrendering, executing a surrendering foe, acting outside the rules of engagement, massacring an entire village including women and children, killing fleeing foes, fighting as a child soldier, using child soldiers, treason, and torture. Oh, don't forget he killed child soldiers too, they were just on his side. The guy from Taken does torture. Impersonating an enemy soldier. It's only a breach when you do it for the espionage or an offensive mission. It's not a war crime to impersonate an enemy or non-combatant, like Red Cross, UN, or Chaplain, to evade capture or escape as a prisoner of war. Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. Due process of law, civil rights violations, kidnapping, torture, and murder. But they deserve every bit of it, and we've loved Frank while he was committing these obvious crimes. He's more of an anti-hero though. Even he himself doesn't say what he's doing is right, only necessary. There's an issue where he sees some cops putting Punisher stickers on their cars, and he tells them to knock it off because he's not the good guy. He tells them to emulate Captain America instead. I hate it when the main character hates killing, but then kills swaths of cronies working for the big bad, gets to said big bad, and refuses to kill them. I just killed 50 people, mostly security, but some were scientists, some could have been secretaries, IT people, whatever. But I can't kill you, because then I'll be just as bad as you. Generally in the film followed by, hey, he shot me, bang. Now I'm justified in killing him. There's a great post somewhere pointing out all the times Avatar Aang kills someone, only for him to have a crisis of conscience before fighting the planet-wide dictator who burned off his son's face for not wanting to sacrifice troops. The rebels killed a crap ton of people when they blew up the Death Stars. So many independent contractors who just took a guaranteed government gig. While the first one was complete, the second took an active role in an ongoing battle. There's no crimes here, they were active and hostile. If anything, the Empire committed a crime by getting into the battle with those contractors on board. Obviously not a movie, but I'd like to bring up Halo. Spartans are biologically and psychologically enhanced child soldiers that were made to squash rebellions. It's only by chance that they were invaded by the Covenant and began fighting them instead. And for those who aren't aware, basically they were kidnapped as children and replaced by clones that would die soon after due to complications that came up with the cloning process, as was the plan. The Halo universe at least recognizes how evil and messed up the Spartan program was. Typically, whenever a soldier or a civilian finds out the truth, they're disgusted by the entire program. To cover up their part, Oni blames everything on Halsey and she just takes the blame. But the lore doesn't hide the fact that Oni are the real boogeymen, and that they'd gladly do it again if they could maintain their version of order. Yeah, it's a weird bit of side lore that comes up all the way through the last few games, but never actually affects what you're doing. You're essentially on the side of the evil empire all through those games. It's just that you're temporarily fighting an evil theocracy and on a break from massacring small-time rebels. The best movies are the ones where you can understand the antagonist's side and the protagonist isn't perfect. The Jackie Chan movie The Foreigner did this right by displaying many different kinds of terror acts, but ends wrong because Jackie doesn't get his comeuppance. He did a whole bunch of bad stuff and got away for free because he had a sad story, I guess? Trying to stop the bad guy and destroying the entire city in the process. The premise of Captain America Civil War. In Red Dead 2, you can fake surrender to lawmen. The bloodiest shootout I had, I was trying to surrender. I don't know what happened. I gently bumped a guy with my horse by accident and a lawman saw me, so I got off and put my hands up like, "Sorry, I'll pay the fine or whatever." I never actually surrendered before, so I didn't know what I was doing. I was just standing there with my hands up, and the two cops kept saying, "Put your hands up," and then they just started blasting. It was a gosh darn bloodbath in the middle of the town. The bounty on me was ludicrous by the time I got out of there. Everything Jack Bauer did. That whole series is just a middle finger to the Geneva Convention. Battlefield, Call of Duty, or any other military game. Wanton destruction, buildings, infrastructure that isn't a direct target, using grenade launchers at close range, giving no quarter or aid to injured combatants, shooting humans directly with a 50 cal and larger weapons, flamethrowers, anything with a tripwire like claymores. Those are usually manually triggered, by the way. Video games and movies always get that wrong. Also, Taken, the first movie. Torture, murder, giving no quarter. This is really common in any media though. The good guys always executing injured enemies. Dressing as the enemy. Most movies. Try playing Spec Ops: The Line if you want a game that's kind of self-aware about it. Oh boy. Also, it probably doesn't count as a war crime, but it definitely wouldn't be allowed. Captain America wearing a flag as a uniform. Flag code says the flag should not be used as bedding, drapery, or worn as clothing, especially uniforms. Killing or finishing off injured enemies. That's kind of a grey area. If they're wounded in the middle of an active combat zone and still have weapons or equipment in hand, then you're probably good. Or if you're assaulting through an area, you can just put rounds into anything that would be a threat. If the fighting is done though, then yeah, you can't just shoot prisoners or the wounded. In Ace Combat Zero, you get points for destroying refugee tents. I'm looking at a lot of these other answers, and the one I haven't seen come up yet is mock execution. It's a hugely popular plot device to point a weapon at someone's head and pull the trigger when the chamber was empty, or to push someone off a roof onto a waiting platform or pad or whatever. But convincing someone that they or someone else is going to be killed imminently is a form of torture and thus a crime. Now that you know this, you'll see it everywhere. They're literally called the Dirty Dozen, and the way they dispose of those Third Reich people and their women, by pouring gasoline and grenades onto a bomb shelter, lived up to their name. But war crimes are usually only charged against the losers. It reminds me of what Defense Secretary Robert McNamara said of firebombing civilians in Tokyo in the documentary Fog of War, that they'd realized that if they'd lost the war, the bombing tactics they used would have definitely had them arrested for crimes. The Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. violate pretty much everyone's constitutional rights in a majority of the movies. The Good in the Good, Bad, and the Ugly movie kills the most people over its runtime. Aragorn beheading the mouth of Sauron in the extended edition of The Return of the King. This is the King of Gondor beheading an unarmed messenger, something Tolkien specifically condemns as vile orc behavior earlier in the novel, and is then brought up again in the Mouth of Sauron chapter, when the Mouth of Sauron claims unassailability and Gandalf rejects it, saying, "The rules of war don't apply in Mordor," but then clarifies that obviously the men of Gondor are better than to murder an ambassador. And then Peter Jackson is like, "Hyuk!" Austin Powers crushed a guy with a steamroller, although that was more of an industrial accident than anything else. Brick killed a guy with a trident. Batman severely beats his victims, breaks bones, causes severe harm with gadgets, regardless of who he's fighting. Sure, the Joker deserves to lose teeth, but what about the random dealer? Does a desperate poor person selling substances to make ends meet in a brutal craphole city like Gotham deserve to be hospitalized? This is a huge theme of the Animorphs series. The main characters contemplate and even go through with mass murder on several occasions, as well as being literal child soldiers, and this isn't even going into the Andalites, who, while supposedly being on the good team, admit to using a virus to wipe out an entire planet to stop the villains from getting its resources. Have you seen Fury? Where do I frickin' begin? Killing prisoners? Looting? Attempted unspeakable act? Still one of the best movies I've seen. Also Band of Brothers. Spears is known for killing unarmed POWs. Jon Snow uses child soldiers against the White Walkers. Definitely not cool. I think in times of extreme urgency, using child soldiers isn't really a war crime. Like, just about everyone's gonna fight if not doing so means your death. It's why so many Soviets fought the Germans so viciously in World War II. It always bothered me that the British sieging a building full of Americans in the Patriot and burning it down with them inside was tremendously bad, but one would applaud William Wallace doing the same to a building full of British in Braveheart. My God, the top 20 answers are all either Saving Private Ryan or Star Wars: The Clone Wars. What small symptoms led to massive health issues for you? I owe my life to my barber. When I was 17, he noticed a mole on the top of my head. He said I should get that looked at. Two things could have happened here. One, I could have brushed it off. Two, he didn't have to say anything. Anyways, I went to get it checked out and ended up having it cut out with a scalpel. Turns out it was cancerous, but at the very early stages. They did a little more cutting and were able to get everything out. Almost 20 years ago, and life is good. Anything that's persistent. If it's not going away, it's not just anything, and it needs to be looked at. Persistent, raging heartburn. I was young and dumb and uninsured, so I put it off. I put it off for nearly 3 months, by which point I was subsisting on plain yogurt and lentils, and still having extremely painful bouts of heartburn and emptying my guts into the toilet. I'd lost a lot of weight and was consistently exhausted and in pain. I finally went to the doctor. It was a raging case of H. pylori infection. It was cleared up with antibiotics, but my doctor warned me at the time that I'd probably caused irreversible damage to my stomach and digestive system by waiting so long. She was right. Within a year, the heartburn was back along with nausea and emptying my guts again. I essentially gave myself a chronic disease by ignoring the initial infection. Moral of the story, if it keeps coming back, don't ignore it. What could have been treatable before will turn into something worse. Increasingly painful cramps and nasty PMS symptoms in general. The family doctor attributed the change to age and just wouldn't take it seriously. After a year of complaints, the doctor prescribed birth control pills, which did nothing. After 2 years, I finally lost it and cried in her office. The cramps had gone from, this is a bit more than usual, to full-on, what the frick 8 out of 10, white-knuckling, spewing pain level. I asked to please be referred to an OB-GYN. When the gynecologist examined me, he also did an ultrasound in the office. He took one look at the screen, told me I could dress, and he'd be right back. When he returned, he was carrying his surgery booking schedule. A few weeks later, I had a total hysterectomy and bilateral salpingectomy, my tubes out. It would usually take up to a year to book that surgery, but he said he absolutely had to find me a spot. He was horrified I hadn't been seen much sooner and described my uterus as more tumor than healthy tissue. It looks more like a raspberry than a pear. Fortunately, it was just benign fibroids, but it taught me a lesson. If something hurts, get help. Yell if you have to. Cue the narrator and all the listeners frantically checking out their recent aches and pains. Also, a raspberry-shaped uterus is one hell of an image. Just if anything suddenly changes without any reason. I think everyone should take the time to really know their own body. All your own little lumps and bumps and processes. Everyone is different, so you can never really rely fully on what experience someone else has had with an illness. If something starts being different with no obvious reason for it, get it checked. Better safe than sorry. I realized this when I was 18, a seemingly healthy 18-year-old woman, and one day, my periods just stopped. I thought nothing of it because, no periods equals yay! A year later, I had received a stage 4B cancer diagnosis. In my particular case, my periods stopping was the first physical symptom I'd had. Other, more obvious symptoms came much later, but it was extremely likely it would have been detected a lot faster if I'd gone to the doctor and investigated why the periods had stopped in the first place. I'm 11 years clear as of April the 10th. I was much taller than the rest of my family. They're all around 5'5", but I was 6'5" by high school. We always joked I was a freak or won the genetic lottery. I went to my father's doctor for a physical. He noticed the swelling in my hands and ran a blood test. Turns out my growth hormone levels were about 3 times the normal amount. I was diagnosed with acromegaly, got an MRI which showed I had a tumor on my pituitary gland. Got it removed and was feeling better after a few years. Isn't that what Andre the Giant had? Yep. The biggest difference between acromegaly and gigantism is timing. His condition probably started at a very young age. My 2-year-old daughter, with hindsight. She'd lie on her left side on the floor randomly during the day. She walked with a wide step and finally multiple diagnosis for constipation, abdominal embryonic rhabdomyosarcoma. After 54 weeks of chemotherapy, strolling through an unimaginable medical hell, she is 4 and almost a year in remission and hard to keep up with, like she's discovering everything again pain-free for the first time. My sister started to get frequent migraines just after she turned 22. Frustratingly, she did look into it. They happened more and more often. She went to the doctor who waved it off as stemming from stress. Her husband had just been sent to Afghanistan. My mum pushed for a CT scan, which the doctor said was unnecessary. My sister went home without any kind of prescription and a suggestion to come back in a few months if it persisted. Well, a few weeks later, she had a massive seizure. Got taken to the emergency room where the doctors discovered a massive tumor in her brain and diagnosed her with a rare form of brain disease. She died within a year. My mum had some light, like 1 or 2 drops 3 times a year, spotting. For context, she was well past menopause. She mentioned it to her GP and he sent her for a test. Uterine cancer. We caught it at stage 1 before it spread, so was able to have a hysterectomy without needing a chemo or radiation therapy. Thank Christ her small and seemingly insignificant symptom was checked out. I don't think you'd classify this as an illness, but I would clean my ears regularly. Yet whenever I went to the doctors, they always said there was too much wax and couldn't see anything. My ears tended to hurt frequently and I had a hard time hearing for years. In high school, I went to a doctor who, as usual, checked my ears. Instead of just brushing it off and saying I needed to clean more, she decided to do a total flush. Took 2 to 3 hours total to get both ears cleared, and when we were done, she discovered I had an ear infection that was most likely a year old. As a result, I can't hear well out of either ear, but that ear in particular has more hearing loss than the other. We also discovered why I had such an abundance of earwax. We'd already figured out I had hyperhidrosis, an overactive sweat gland, and that also caused my ears to make more wax. I've been instructed never to use Q-tips again, which just compresses it all to the sides of my ears. I go to see a doctor once a month to have them flushed. So, had we just had a doctor flush my ears probably 5 years sooner, I wouldn't have had such hearing loss. I started craving iceberg lettuce like you wouldn't believe. Like I'd wake up in the middle of the night and go to the fridge just to eat handfuls of lettuce. At my worst, I was eating an entire bag of lettuce a day. No dressing or toppings, just munching on it like it was popcorn at a movie theater. Finally decided I should drag myself to the doctor for a few blood tests, assuming I was a bit dehydrated or vitamin deficient or something. My hemoglobin was 5 when it should be 13 to 16 ideally. My ferritin, iron stores, level was 1, which is literally as low as the test goes. I went straight from the doctor's office to the hospital to be admitted for 2 blood transfusions and an IV iron infusion. The hospital staff couldn't believe I'd been walking around and even working overtime with a level that low for months. Within 24 hours of my blood and iron transfusions, my lettuce craving went away. This happened to me too. My ferritin level was like 3. I craved sand, not lettuce. All I wanted to eat was sand. I never did, but believe me, I almost bought a bag of it. All I could think was, this is so weird, I'd better not tell anyone. Well, lo and behold, I got sick, autoimmune disease, but didn't know it at the time, and I had blood drawn, and I found out I'm severely anemic. Sand craving suddenly made sense and went away when my iron level was corrected. I feel like these are 2 extreme ends of a body's reaction. Eating lettuce, which is high in iron, makes sense. Sand, on the other hand, how much would you eat before your body realized this wasn't good? Bizarre. My right knee had been slightly funky for a couple of years. I'd originally noticed it after I did a bad tackle playing soccer, landing on my knee. I presumed it was just going to be a niggle that I was going to have to deal with for the rest of my life. It didn't hurt or anything, but what was funky was that you could put your finger on the inside of my knee, and as I compressed and extended my knee, you could feel something clicking past tendons and soft tissues. After a number of years, it seemed like there was a bit of swelling around my knee, and during some downtime from work, I decided I should finally see a doctor about it. I told him about the clicking and showed him. His face isn't something I will forget. It was just disbelief, and he said, "Well, that's not something I've ever felt before." Sent me off for an X-ray and ultrasound. Turns out I had osteochondroma, abnormal bone spur, on the inside of my knee, and the tendons and so on were literally slipping one side to the other as I bent my knee back and forth. The reason I should have looked into it sooner is because before I got a chance to see the specialist and book in for a surgery to get it removed, the spur punctured something in my knee. It caused a lot of swelling and excruciating pain. Straight to emergency, admitted straight away, and there were considerations about operating that night. In the end, they sent me home after 4 days of rest and observation, and I got it removed a couple of weeks later with no major issues. At the time, the specialist noticed that sometimes these things can be genetic and appear in other places in the body. I have a weird clicking in my right foot at the moment that I have no explanation for, and it's starting to get slightly painful. I should probably go to see a doctor. Not me, but my 9-year-old son. Last summer, he complained about leg tiredness and slept a lot. Our pediatrician couldn't find anything wrong with him. Fast forward to January 2017 and suddenly he's constipated and his bladder is retaining enormous amounts of urine. We took him to the local children's hospital and they felt that his constipation was keeping him from releasing urine. So they hit him with gallons of Miralax mixture to get him moving. He pooped quite a bit, but nothing really changed. After a week of this at the hospital, my wife lost her mind on the hospital staff and demanded that they think outside the box. The neurology department came and did an MRI and they found that he had a fatty film at the base of his spine which presented as a tethered cord. They operated immediately. Unfortunately now, the damage is done. My son no longer has bowel or bladder function because of the nerve damage caused by the tethered cord. So we have to use a straight catheter on him 6 times a day and keep his bowels with stimulant laxatives and enemas. We'll be entering a clinic in May where they'll run a series of daily x-rays and enemas to arrive at the mixture we'll need to use going forward. Poor kid will have to live with this for the rest of his life. My wife and I are sick over it. If the issue had been caught sooner, he might not have had to deal with this. If we'd waited longer, it's possible he could have lost the use of his legs. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Not me, but my childhood best friend. She'd had this thing where her hand would spasm. It was kind of like a hand tremor. I just assumed that it was a tic, since I have a similar one, my knee bouncing up and down, when I get nervous. Once I asked her about it and she said that she had pins and needles, so I also considered that she might just be shaking it off, even though the tremors were obviously an involuntary movement. That's really all there was were no other symptoms. She was fine for a really long time and then suddenly, she just rapidly declined within the space of 24 hours. We were in class when she went down and started seizing. Just as quick as she'd gone down, she was awake again and fine. My teacher took her to the nurse and the nurse called her parents. I've had to work hard to try and not be angry at the fact that her parents chose to take her home that night instead of taking her straight to the emergency room. She had a headache, so they gave her ibuprofen and put her to bed. She died sometime in the night of an undiagnosed brain tumor. Often, brain tumors are misdiagnosed as psychiatric issues. So if you notice a rapid decline in your mental health or stability without any clear reason, or even with a reason, get a scan done. If you have pain in your ball bag, don't mess around. Seek medical attention immediately. I had testicular torsion and got lucky. A lot of men have lost one or both to this. I lost one of mine to it when I was 12. Just woke up in the middle of the night in severe pain. Felt like I was being kicked in the jewels repeatedly and they were swollen up huge. My parents, for some reason, decided to basically wait it out for almost 2 days before they took me into the hospital. I had surgery that day. The doctor said if I'd come in right away, they would have saved them both, and if they'd waited another day, I would have lost them both. So now I have one big one that I call the wrecking ball. I experienced pain in my left shoulder, the trapezius muscle, whenever I consumed alcohol, which for me was an infrequent beer. It was odd but not too concerning since I didn't drink very often. Turns out I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and the pain in lymph nodes on the consumption of alcohol was a symptom seen in only a very small percentage of cases, less than 5%. This video is probably going to set off a whole bunch of our hypochondriac viewers. I know I for one will probably be hypersensitive about any pain I feel while drinking after that one. My first friend was a Finnish carpenter and was hand sanding in a deep shelf area and got a splinter, more like a sliver of wood, into the cuticle of his pinky. It was pretty freaking big and he was like, "It'll work its way out on its own." So he left it alone and a red line started to move along his arm from his pinky up into his armpit. He finally got convinced to go to the doctor and it turns out the red line was an infection traveling along his vein. Had he not gone to the doctor when he did, they said that the infection would have ended up in his heart and would have been extremely life-threatening at that point. The second, My best friend was in the hospital, and eventually he ended up passing, but all the stress of him in the hospital and continuing on with his passing gave me a gnarly cramping and waking up to use the bathroom like every hour or two. And not only that, but waking up almost crapping myself and then spending more and more time on the crapper each time. Like having the urge to go without being able to go after initially going. Long story short, ended up with a pretty severe case of Crohn's disease and ended up having some pretty serious 6-hour surgery to remove part of my intestine, bladder, and colon. Yay! Not me, but my wife. She had a rare liver disease that sprung out of nowhere when she was 23. Her initial symptom wasn't jaundice, yellowing of the eyes or skin, like liver diseases tend to start showing themselves with, but extreme itchiness. She figured it was just really dry skin. Turned out to be PSC, primary sclerosing cholangitis, but she's 2 years post-transplant and doing great. My dad has a lot of moles, and my mum forced him to go to the dermatologist because he hadn't been in years. She was worried about a few of the big moles that she thought might be getting bigger. The dermatologist pointed one out and asked if that was one they were concerned about, and no, my mum said that one actually seemed like it was getting smaller, so why would she be concerned? Doctor informed my parents they were doing a biopsy right there and then and cut a 1.5-inch long chunk out of my dad's back. It was melanoma, the really bad skin cancer. It turns out if a mole is getting smaller, it probably is because the immune system has a reason to attack it. The melanoma was only stage 1 because the dermatologist caught it so early. Dad's doing fine now, this was 8 years ago. He's had another mole removed in the past few years and goes to that same dermatologist twice a year because he has quite literally hundreds of moles and freckles. My mum also checks on his more concerning moles pretty often, and if she thinks they look strange, off to the dermatologist he goes. The standard for when to be concerned about moles is ABCDE. If a mole is asymmetrical, the border is not well defined, if the color is odd, like black, blue, red, or white, if the diameter is larger than the diameter of a pencil, or if the mole is evolving, book an appointment with your local friendly dermatologist, and take a picture of suspicious moles so you can keep track of any changes. And finally, if you have a family history of skin cancer, or fit a lot of the risk factors, even if you aren't concerned about anything in particular, consider booking an appointment if it's within your means to do so. This was actually my mother, but it's good to know if you're a woman or no women. If you've been through menopause and your period comes back after over a year, get it checked out. It's probably nothing, but it can also be something. My mother is fine, fortunately. Not me, but my grandfather. He had trouble breathing for a long time, nothing horrible, just shortness of breath, heavy breathing, etc. But he had to take care of my grandma. He went to the hospital when he started coughing, a dry cough, unable to stop. They diagnosed lung cancer, and he died within 3 weeks. The doctor told us that if he'd come earlier, they might have been able to save him. I was in my 8th grade, and I vividly remember the day I'd noticed that I couldn't see properly with my right eye, even with my spectacles, and I thought that maybe I needed to get my eyesight checked because the power of my glasses might have increased. I didn't give it much importance because I had exams, and after 4 months, when I finally went to get my eyes checked, the doctor informed me to go to a bigger hospital because he felt it wasn't normal. I went to a specialist eye hospital and they informed me that I was diagnosed with glaucoma and I had lost almost 90% of my vision in my right eye. Intraocular pressure, IOP, in the eye that should have been below 21 was 70, which is insanely high, and it was starting to affect my left eye as well, where it was 23. They didn't know why I had glaucoma, because it's very rare at that age. I had to get operated in my right eye immediately because medication wasn't controlling the IOP. I missed half of the classes in my 9th grade, and then finally I had to get operated in my left eye as well in my 10th grade, right before my final exams to control the condition. I wish I could have been more careful and went to the doctor immediately. This whole grouping is like the dark hole of WebMD. I had problems walking as a child and had a big role in my gait. My parents and the doctor thought it was a foot problem, so I was taken to a podiatrist and given orthotics, which helped. However, this didn't fix my pronated leg. Doctors then said I had growing pains, so my parents ignored the pain for a while, especially since I never really had too many problems playing footy and cricket. I guess I just learned to put up with the pain. After 18 years of pain in my legs and feet, I had a physio figure out that my hips didn't line up and that it was highly likely that I suffered from hip dysplasia during birth that wasn't corrected. My right knee and foot are ruining themselves now as a result of my right leg being shorter than my left. Well, that's some family guilt to go around, I suppose, although the fact that multiple doctors were initially unable to correctly diagnose you hints that this was a tough one to catch. Rough luck. My father. He'd be working around the house or at his job and he would just trip and fall for no reason. It happened 3 or 4 times. Long story short, it was ALS and he died from it just over 3 years after those initial symptoms. My dad had a sore throat and kept losing his voice. The docs couldn't figure it out. Finally, they figured out it was ALS. He died in about a year. The falling came later on. It's a sad, sad disease. A few years ago on vacation, I overheard the table next to me talking about how their mum's voice had been gone for months, and they couldn't figure it out. My heart sank. After their lunch, I pulled one of them aside and told them to ask their doc about the possibility of ALS. I told them I hoped that it wasn't, but it might be good to ask. He had no idea what ALS was, and I hope he didn't Google it. That small pain that never seemed to completely go away just under the left side of my rib cage could have saved myself the horrible experience of acute pancreatitis. Iron deficiency that doesn't get better no matter how much supplementation you take. I have Crohn's disease. Same, except celiac disease. I was so tired of doctors taking blood to check my iron that I started refusing. I told them, yes, I'm anemic, I always have been. I've been on iron and iron builders for years, so no more blood work unless you tell me you're checking for something else. I need my blood more than you do. I should have made more of an effort to get them to look for why. A week before my 4th Halloween, I was playing on my Cat in the Hat scooter and fell on the pavement and got a good scratch on my knee. 24 hours later, it started itching pretty bad. Another 24 hours later, I couldn't sleep. It was itching like crazy and getting red and hot to the touch. Mum thinks I'm being a drama queen. In her defense, I was a bit of a dramatic three-nager and doesn't really look at it too closely. 24 hours later, it aches so bad I can't walk, and the itching and redness is worse. I end up in the hospital for a week with cellulitis that's so bad I came very close to amputation and death. I had no clue at the time, but my mum said it was bad enough that they told her to have relatives come to visit, just in case it was their last chance to do so. The doctor told my mum that if I'd come into the office on the first or second day, I might have gotten by with just a strong injection of penicillin and a week of oral antibiotics. What are some scams everybody should be made aware of? If they say it's not a pyramid scheme, it is. If you have to pay to work there, you're a customer, not an employee. honorsociety.org. I got an email from them and it seemed legit since they had my name and school, but they want $50 to join, and according to them, I was being invited because academic achievements. Bullcrap, I did real bad that semester. Funny thing is, I didn't know it existed until I got an email from them today, and after which I proceeded to Google them and then write the story. Credit card scam. You get a call from someone claiming to be your credit card company. They say someone's been using your card. They have all your info and they tell you what it is. They have your name, address, credit card number, and maybe even the last 4 of your social security number. What they don't have is the 3-digit code on the back of your credit card, and that's what they're after. They ask you to verify it to check your identity. They'll say it's to check that you're still in possession of your credit card. You give it to them, and that's what they need to run up your credit card online. For everyone asking why they have your other data and not the 3-digit number, it's because businesses aren't allowed to store or keep it like your other info. Has anyone ever noticed that an online store might have your credit card number on file, but they still ask you for the CVV? That's why. We can't pay much right now, but if this project goes well, there'll be lots more work down the road. I've been in the freelance-ish design business for 14 years and never has more work down the road panned out when the client uses it as a hook to get an upfront discount. Stick to clients who can pay. Imagine if you went into a Subway and instead of offering you a 10th sandwich free after paying for 9, you said, how about I pay you half price for the first sandwich, and then if I like it, I'll probably buy more sandwiches at full price down the road. A friend of mine just told me his daughter met someone at work and scored a $140K job a year as some project manager. She's currently a part-time cashier. Turns out it's a new social media startup and she won't get paid until after her first year of work. I tried to give some caution without sounding too cynical, but they were so damn excited. The main exception to this being a scam might be performance and acting type work, but even then, you need to be so careful and scope out the person you're working with, their credentials, and who else is on board. The narrator has been with both successful and failed projects before in his line of work. Basically, there's no such thing as too much information. The fake kidnapping and ransom scam that preys on the elderly. Someone called my in-laws-to-be early in the morning one day saying they'd kidnapped their son and his wife, we weren't even married at the time, in Mexico, and we wouldn't be released unless they wired over a crazy amount of money. They heard screaming in the background and a man shouting, "Dad, help me! Help me!" They looked on our Facebook page and saw that they'd checked us in at a Latin restaurant in Thailand where they knew we were, but thought, maybe they went to Mexico. So his parents flipped out and were about to pay before his eldest brother called me in the middle of our Thailand night to prove to them that we were alive. People should ask for answers to personal questions, attempt to contact the supposedly kidnapped, and other steps before falling for these pricks' BS. Usually, when someone who contacts your house claiming to be someone from the government agency or Microsoft, it's just a lead up to a scam. Just always ask for some kind of identification, and sometimes Googling the phone number can lead you somewhere. I had a guy with a thick Indian accent call and say he was from Microsoft Tech Support, and he had an alert that claimed I had terrible viruses on my computer. I asked him who he worked for, and he said, Windows Tech Support. He wanted me to go on some website to download a program that would remotely connect him to my computer. The kicker is, the website he sent me to had a warning page that said, there are scammers using this website to get your info. They're claiming to be from Windows or Microsoft. Your bank will never send people to your house to take your cards from you. I was visiting my grandma's house when she got scammed. Got a call about 9 p.m. from someone claiming to be the police. Yes, your grandson was in a car accident while driving drunk. He's here at the police station, and this is his phone call. I'll put him on. Her grandson gets on the phone. Grandma? Sorry, my voice sounds funny. I broke my nose in the wreck. I'm in jail. Can you pay my bail? Grandma was hysterical. She didn't have the money to pay the bail they were asking for, and she was calling relatives left and right trying to pull some money together to get him out. In a last-ditch effort, she called her grandson's cell phone and he picked up, perfectly fine, wondering why she was calling so late. Needless to say, we called the police, but they couldn't trace the number. Disgusting how they took advantage of an old lady like that. I thought she'd have a heart attack. In short, don't pay anyone's bail unless you know they're in jail. There's a pyramid scheme that's been going around my area the last year or so. It's called World Ventures. Basically disguises itself as a discount travel club. It's legal since they sell a tangible product, but the business itself is extremely shady and gets sued all the time. They usually prey on college students, stay-at-home mums, and returning veterans. Ugh, I work for a BMW dealership and have sold cars to these people. I've tried telling them it's a scam, but they won't listen. It pains me to know that they'll have to give up their cars in a few months when they no longer have people who will buy their discount travel packages. If you ever get stopped by a deaf person trying to sell you a pin for $3, 99% of the time, they're not deaf. One time I was in a Starbucks and a deaf guy walked around once passing out leaflets on how to sign basic letters, and then walked around again asking for money by tapping on you and putting out his hand. When he got to the girl right before me, she started to sign to him fluently, and he just gave her a thumbs up and walked out. My sister used to hang out with a lot of deaf people. I don't think she officially got her interpreter's license, but she was close. She got in the habit of carrying business cards with information about this group that helps getting jobs, plays in bowling leagues together, just generic, hey, we're deaf, come hang out with us, kind of group. Whenever she started signing and gave them a card, they quickly left. There was only one time where a girl took the card and started hanging out with them. I guess, like with everything, there are times where the scam isn't a scam, but the scammers ruin it for the few good people who are there. I work in a bank. Some scammers will test whether your card works by making a £5 donation to a charity, which can be done on ATMs. If this works, they'll slowly start to empty your account by buying vouchers from supermarkets. If you see a charitable donation you didn't make, investigate it immediately. Door-to-door magazine sales. While some of these are legitimate, I got scammed out of $40 to $50 about 7 years ago. A kid came up to my door. I saw there was a white van down the end of the street and about 10 to 15 kids getting out of it. This one particular kid stopped at my door, gave me a pitch about how they were selling magazines to build a fund that would send them all to college, and I thought to myself, why not help this kid out? The kid was about 16 or 17 and had an ID badge that said he worked for some charity or something, and he could offer me budget subscriptions. More than half off the price if I were to subscribe through the actual magazine's website. I signed up for Maxim, Muscle Mustangs, and Fast Fords, and 2 or 3 others. Never received those magazines. Talked to my neighbor down the street that signed up for one of them, and he never received this either. Watch your grannies. One with dementia here almost got taken for thousands from scammers in Jamaica. She was on her way to the mailbox but looked so sneaky the nursing home staff alerted her daughter, who put stop checks on everything, including checks that Granny had mailed the day before. A U-Haul reservation isn't reserving an actual vehicle for you, it's just putting you in their system as someone who wants a vehicle. And their reservation guarantee is a scam, since there's always a truck 2 states over you could use, but of course you'd have to pay for the extra mileage. Working in banking, I see this kind of crap a lot. If someone sends you a check that is more than it should be, and you have to send a portion back to them, stop! This is a scam. No legitimate business or individual does business this way. That check will bounce and you will be caught holding the bag. Somebody got a hold of our company name and account numbers to pull this scam on people. I had to field so many calls telling people not to do it. I had one lady accuse me of trying to scam her after I finally got annoyed and said, "I want you to explain to me exactly how I plan to scam you by asking you not to send money to a stranger." Most of us are delighted by the dream that the difficulty in our little lives might be alleviated by some sudden influx of money, and do away with little things like common sense. Don't be too hard on people, guys. If you're a male Westerner and you travel to Eastern Europe, a super common scam is that two very attractive girls introduce themselves and hang out with you for the day. It's a long con. They have some story about why they want someone to hang with, they'll have a meal with you, go to some tourist attractions, seriously spending a day. One of them will seem to have a personal interest in you. Then they suggest a place for drinks or food. The girls order for you, everything is fine. Then the bill comes and it's something insane like $1,500. If you can't pay it, bouncers appear and walk you to the nearest bank to help you withdraw as much as you can. It's become a common enough scam that just about every guidebook and hostel check-in will warn you. To clarify, yes, the restaurant or club is in on it. Yes, the girls are working with the club. Yes, the bouncers are working with the girls and the club. Yes, it's a scam and not a coincidence. The girls did not rack up a $1,500 bill to get the guys to pay for it. The girls collude with the bar to get the guys to agree to order a single $1,500 drink. The girls get paid a cut. Another common and shorter scheme that targets foreigners worldwide is the broken package scam. Essentially, they find some nice-looking but cheap and fragile art. Then they'll walk around with it in a bag looking for a timid-looking tourist, exchange student, or whatever. They'll then set it to bump into them, dropping the package, and then flying into a rage about how the tourist broke their $300 to $1,500 vase or whatever. "Hi, do you have the time?" Take out your phone and check. And mugged. I was at a baseball game for a work outing. I just got the Galaxy S3. I was in a secluded seating area by a hot dog stand, playing around on it instead of watching the game. This 11 to 13-year-old comes up and asks to borrow it. He had been separated from his parents. "Nope, but I'll help you find a park employee to get you a phone." The second I found an employee, the kid went running. And my friends tease me for still wearing a watch. Who's laughing now? You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The kids that come to your door selling magazine subscriptions are not trying to get money for college. Most of the time, those subscriptions are bullcrap, the kid is being taken advantage of by some butthole, and it's near slavery conditions. Don't support these buttholes. Do not cash someone's check for them at the ATM, no matter how distressed they seem. It will just bounce. The Florida government pulls out public service announcements that says this, paraphrased, "If you want anyone to leave your house, even employees of a business, tell them. If they won't, call the cops and the cops will come out and make them leave." In other words, don't let anyone intimidate you, even if they're for real. I've heard of this one but haven't seen it. You're driving, say in the right lane, and a crappy-looking car gets in front of you while another crappy-looking car sits in your blind spot to your left side. The car in front slows down little by little until you're annoyed and possibly tailgating them, setting the trap. He then slams on the brakes and stops short, giving you either the choice of rear-ending him or swerving into his buddy. Either way, you hit a junker of a car and he asks for cash to not report it to the insurance. Ways to avoid? Don't tailgate. Pretty simple. Follow at a safe distance. If you do rear-end or swerve into the car, just report it to the insurance. A lot of the times, these people don't have insurance, and if they do, they might not see any of the money and their rates will go up either way. You'll still have to pay and your rates will go up, but at least the scammer didn't get off for free. They sell the hair they get for tens of millions, then only donate a few hundred wigs a year. If you have to buy anything other than a basic set of power tools before you can start your new job, it's a scam. I'm looking at you, pyramid schemes. ACN is a huge scam. $500 to join, only move up by getting people to join. You make all your money by bringing in suckers. You make next to nothing from selling their services. They prey on college kids that need quick money. Typical pyramid scheme. The big shots in the company pump all their money into nice cars to sell the illusion of money. A lot of them also drive obviously rented BMWs and Mercedes. They are scum. My mother never met a pyramid scam she didn't love. She tried to get me to sign up for this ACN garbage. She invited me and my brother over for dinner one night and wanted to introduce us to their new friends. We didn't even get more than 10 minutes into our visit and their friends wanted to sit us down and talk to us about a business venture we might be interested in. I stopped the guy about 2 minutes into his sales pitch and was like, "Are you kidding me? You brought us over here to try and sell us on a pyramid scheme?" I left. It actually did some harm to my relationship with my parents for a couple of months. When you go to other countries on vacation and you get on a tour, there are definitely places, especially in China, where you're intended to stop and have a look around. But at many of those places, they won't let you leave until you buy something. This is how these guys make money. Man, you could make an entire thread on China scams. I've been to China 3 times and dodging the scams was a ton of fun. If you won the Canadian lottery and you've never been to Canada or played the Canadian lottery, it's not real. I've had a couple of people come into the banks I've worked in thinking they won all this money and then get teed off when you give them the reality check that it's not real. And by reality check, do you mean telling them the situation or handing them a check from the register with the words, "You got scammed, sorry, eh?" written on it? You work in a bank, so either option is viable. If you're at uni, keep an eye out for VEMA, pyramid scheme that doesn't say it, aimed at students. The American one is vector marketing. They advertise for students to start at $15 an hour, so naturally a lot of kids are interested. It's door-to-door knife sales, and the $15 an hour is if your commission is at a certain level. They're calculating that number by taking your commission and dividing it by the number of hours you've worked. There's actually zero base pay. They claim that the knives sell themselves. Okay, my roommate in college sat through a 2-hour seminar from these guys. VEMA is in America now, and it's the biggest freaking scam I've ever seen. They're lying to college kids, brainwashing them into thinking that they can actually make money by selling this energy drink, Verve, to other people, so those people can try to sell it. They pitch it as starting your own business and tell them that if they end up moving X amount of product, we'll pay for you to finance your car, in which they give you $400 a month to use on whatever you want, but they pretty much plant the idea in your head that you need to get a Range Rover, Audi, BMW, etc., and have VEMA stickers covering it. But when the person you're flipping products to's business goes under because someone you were selling to can't afford it anymore, or any situation in which your network isn't meeting the quota to be eligible for the monthly stipend, they stop giving you that $400 a month that they've convinced you to use on a high-end car, and you're still responsible for the payments, with no income. I could go on for days, but basically this is a huge problem on college campuses and it doesn't get nearly enough attention. I've said it before and I'll say it again, LifeLock, complete crock of doo-doo. The owner likes to publish his social security number as a marketing gimmick as proof that his service works. It works so well that he's had his identity stolen 13 times. Check your credit card once a year for free. All major bureaus are required by law to offer this at a number of credit card checking websites. Report any discrepancies to the bureaus directly. Do not go to any of the credit report websites that require you to sign up for stuff. That is another complete scam. Don't buy stereo systems from guys in vans. Don't buy anything from guys in vans, unless it's your substance dealer. Not even ice cream? This will ruin my summer. The Polish or hot dog with a 20-ounce drink and one free refill at Costco food court for $1.50. Costco is getting scammed on this deal. I bought my first house last year and I had at least one scam per week coming in the mail for the first couple of months. All of them look very official, and as a first-time homebuyer, they kinda freaked me out. Luckily, Google Foo was strong and I was able to do proper research to prevent me from being screwed. Former retail jewelry clerk here, jewelry has to be one of the biggest rip-offs by far. Jewelry is relatively cheap to make, especially things made with silver. At a store I used to work at, we were selling CZ and sterling silver rings that were purchased for $8 and were marked up to $160, but it was always on sale for 60% off. Then there's those diamond rings that literally have a diamond chip surrounded by a strategically cut piece of silver that gives it the illusion it's a bigger diamond, on sale for only $200. Then there's that white gold bullcrap. There's no such thing as white gold, it's just normal gold covered in rhodium that you have to get replaced every so often. If you like the look of white gold and don't have special allergies, just get silver and save yourself some money. Gold is probably marked up for at least 500% of the amount of what gold and diamonds are actually worth. Probably not as common, but I work in a pharmacy, so here's my 2 cents. Brand name doesn't mean better. There are basically only 3 medications of one class where it matters a bit more that you get brand over generic. They're Synthroid, Calmodin, and the epilepsy medication. It's not even that that brand is better, it's just that since those drugs have a very narrow therapeutic range of effect, we want to make sure you stay stable, and generics can vary slightly in potency. Since there's some confusion, there is no issue if you take generics of one of the ones listed here. They're just as effective, just that you don't want to switch back and forth from generic to brand. For any other medication, your body doesn't care if you take generic. There are exceptions if you're allergic to an inactive ingredient, but generally everyone is fine on a generic. There are always exceptions to the rule, of course, but the general rule of thumb is that you're going to be fine on a generic medication. Epileptic here, people always ask me why I don't take generic when I say my pills are expensive. This is why. I would rather pay than have a seizure. The biggest scam most of us will fall for is buying our college textbooks from your university store. Anytime anyone tries to sell you something unsolicited, whether it's in person, by mail, or digitally, just say no. There's no magic deal fairy that's looking out for your best needs, that's going to fall from the sky and conveniently present you with something you want or need. The Who's Who books. I still cringe when I think about my mum falling for this one. They send you an offer to put you in a book as being someone that's worth something. You have to fill out the form they send you and then send it back to them with $50. And then in about a month, they send you a behemoth-sized book, which is basically just a list of people who've paid to be in said book. My mum has published a few books, so when she first got the offer to be in the Who's Who book, she thought it was a legitimate bit of recognition. We realized it was scammy a few months later when I got the same offer for having received my Bachelor of Arts. Your daughter was not referred to us as someone who might enjoy acting or modeling opportunities. We buy mailing lists. Of course, you'll come out anyway to one of the open call sessions to see what we're all about. We'll tell you we'll call you if your little girl is accepted to compete as a finalist. 100% guarantee she will be. Don't believe the bullcrap about processing applications. Then we just need you to pay us a sponsor fee so she can compete. Of course, if anything comes up and you have to take your daughter out of our pageant, you're screwed because sponsor fees are non-refundable in the fine print. But it's totally worth the steep fee to compete because your daughter is really beautiful. And we're not just saying that, and you could win part of $20,000 and… Okay, maybe I'm a little bit bitter. I guess it isn't technically a scam, but if people were less apt to get blinded by the dollar signs, my company would very likely be out of business, and I don't think I'd be very sad about that. When you're jobless and looking on Craigslist, I know, big red flag right there, but hey, you never know. Always grab post information during the phone call about location and job description and Google the crap out of them. I've been potentially scammed quite a few times. What's the most disturbing thing you've found when working on someone else's computer? MS Paint being used to design the company logo. A buddy wanted me to convert a hard drive to an external. Needed some copying and formatting. He had tons of pictures of Arctic sea life. It was like every walrus, seal, or aquatic life form on Google image search was saved to his hard drive. I'm pretty sure he did it to mess with me. Was it originally his C drive? It was probably made by Seagate. I work as an accountant now, but in a former life I did a stint in tech support. I remember getting a report that a printer, a LaserJet 5P, was constantly jamming. I arrived and started checking all the usual spots for paper fragments to get stuck in rollers. I flipped down the back cover and a chunk of fried chicken fell out. I still have no idea. I had a customer who wanted me to find pictures of her son's eggplant on the computer. The long version of the story is, the son had gotten in legal trouble in the past for sending unsolicited pictures of his twig and berries to anyone and everyone. He wasn't allowed to use the internet on the computer, but as his parents were computer illiterate, they had no idea whether or not he was doing it again, and they wanted to find out. I ended up writing her instructions and showing her how to search for herself, as searching for pictures of her underage son's wang was in ethically murky waters. It was a good thing I did too, because she ended up finding some. I really wonder the legal grounds for that. I'm fairly certain it would not be illegal. The actual illegal act of child prawn is when you're sharing it or consuming it. It's not when you stumble upon it. So I think you would have been fine. Very strange story though. Half an inch of fluffy, sticky white gunk coating every inch of the interior. It was a podiatrist's office. It was next to a sort of booth where they would grind the calluses off old people's feet. I didn't know that when I opened it up, I just knew that it smelled faintly of burnt hair. This is uniquely gross and I have no words other than the ones currently coming out of my mouth. What can I say? It deserved acknowledgement. Also, there are a few stories where we'll be using the word prawn as a placeholder for its similar-sounding word meaning adult content used for the gratification of those with time on their hands. Case in point, I was setting up my grandfather's printer and he warned me, "There's a lot of prawns on there," meaning on the PC. I laughed and showed him how to delete his search history. I had a girl ask to use my computer and I was like, "Hell no, there's so much prawns on this thing." And she goes, "I don't care. Motherfricky, you just don't do that to people. You don't care if I watch prawns, but you will care if you see all the kinds of prawns that I watch. We ain't talking Playboy here." My dad has his own software company and does tech support for it and general computer repairs for anyone who drops by his office. Don't know what's the most disturbing thing he's come across, but I was present when a man dropped his mother's laptop. Dad booted it up and immediately encountered a common problem. It was password protected. So he asks the son for the password. The son has to call his mum to get it. The mum tells the son, who has to relay it to my dad. Suck Big Wang 2014. Read a story on here about a Geek Squad type guy who found a bunch of gory murder scene photos. Turned out the guy was a homicide detective though. Call it professional courtesy, but I feel like that's probably something you should give a heads up about. I don't do the job anymore, but once I did an install where they ordered Adult Channel for their service. No big deal, but as soon as I get there he starts, "You have the channel on there, right?" And I look at the order and say, "Yeah." So I'm doing the install and his wife offers me a drink and food. I turn it down, we're supposed to, it's job policy. I also did a virus check on their computer. So after I finish the install for the cable, he says, "Okay, now show us the channel." Usually people wait for us to leave, so it was weird to look up the channel and watch prawns in a guy's house with his wife on a 65-inch TV. So I excuse myself to work on the computer. As soon as I log in, the last page he was on was importing foreign women for doing the deed, like mail-order brides. The next tab was for Group Whoopee, and the next tab was for Craigslist. I didn't go too far into it because it was just really awkward as I heard the sounds from the TV downstairs. So when I go to leave, him and his wife don't look at me and they are fixated on the teeming prawns on the television. I say my goodbye speech, but they don't even turn. It was just weird all round for me. Pictures of graveyards at night and a guy with a hood and torch walking in them and digging. Plans detailing a prospective campus rampage on the same computer as very sweet emails to his grandmother. He had self-deleted 2 months prior and I was recovering data for his family. I didn't tell them. The guy was severely overweight. I found before and after shaving pictures of his crotch and butthole. I couldn't even look him in the eye when I handed his computer back to him. I did computer work for 8 years. Conservatively, I serviced around 1,000 machines a year. I never went digging through the computer or anything, but I stumbled upon CP 3 times. Do some thinking to figure out what CP could stand for on a person's computer and why we'd arrest someone for it. We had a contact at the local FBI and there was a quarantine procedure to preserve chain of custody and all of that. However, if you really want to gross people out in the office, mention Mr. Santa. This guy had a super slow PC, which was one of the reasons he brought it in. From power on to being able to open the start menu was 45 minutes. The only problem is, his desktop was a full-screen image of himself wearing a Santa hat, and only a Santa hat. He was rather large and had hundreds of warts everywhere. God damn. Guy was having problems with his computer, so he brought it to us for a virus removal. Standard stuff, I set it up with a monitor, keyboard, and left it to boot up. When I came back, it had booted to desktop. The background was a picture of a guy, not the customer, fully undressed and spread eagle. I've never switched a monitor so fast. I'm working Geek Squad years ago. This guy comes in, tatted up head to toe, not your punk band tattoos, fully blown multi-years in prison tattoos. Plops down his tower. "I heard you do data backup. How much to back up all of my prawns?" I see labor dollars and without missing a beat, I seize his crustacean folder and quote him $160 to put it into 2 DVD discs. The manager rips me a new one, not sure why, labor dollars are huge, and go to his bonus, and says I have to do the work. Whatever, I just copy the files over. I didn't even see anything, it's just file names whizzing by. Well, one caught my eye. Piegrape.avi. Pie as in P-I, grape? Crap, what is this, I think? Some sort of math prawn? Sure enough, I fire it up, I have to see what it is. A woman comes out in a nightgown and takes it off, rubs something between her legs, lays down and spreads them. Before you know it, a full-blown pig rolls into the scene, jumps on the bed, and the rest is history. Then I realized in the split second what the file name was on my screen. I misread it and can never unsee it. And thank God you misread it, because frankly, I'm still not sure it's okay to put this one in one of our videos. Oh well, YOLO! My grandmother passed away recently, and my 87-year-old grandfather got a new girlfriend, 27 years younger than him, about 2 months after she died. I was setting up a printer for his laptop, and in his bookmarks he had a few links to marital aid distributors. So now I know that my grandfather does the deed far more often than I do and needs medication to get it up. Which makes sense, I suppose. Old people be doing it all the time. Sure, but I would rather be willfully ignorant of my grandfather's bedroom life. Sort of like how some parents prefer to pretend that their children have never ever done the deed and never want to. Found a folder on my mum's computer titled Sins of My Children, found weird poetry and, if I recall correctly, chat logs of some guy offering to kill my wife and me. Holy crap, man, you can't just post that and not elaborate. Are relations okay with your mother now? My mother has always hated my wife. We were trying to get through it by going to a museum together. My mum said a friend of hers was going to meet up with us there, but he never showed up. Then later I found the folder when I was fixing her computer. I barely talk to her now. My cousin worked for a summer doing IT stuff for her mum's company. She worked on a co-worker's laptop and discovered explicit emails indicating he was sleeping with her mum, who was still married to her dad. I was asked to double-check a bunch of computers for pictures and identifying information before recycling the towers. Found a Windows 98 machine that hadn't seen the internet in a very long time, and on it was Napster, just like we choose to remember it, along with ICQ, Yahoo Messenger, and CompuServe. I found a load of prawns while working on a client's computer. Lots of Brazzers cuts and fragments of videos. I came to find out he wasn't obsessed with shellfish at all, he was an editor for Brazzers. A photo album full of polar bears with Coke bottles photoshopped onto their hands, like very badly done. About 40 photos, and I was just trying to update a friend's drivers and couldn't resist opening the folder called Coke Bears. A relative once asked me to help find some files on her very cluttered hard disk. When a search failed me, I started browsing through folders when I found it. Pictures of pillows. Every single kind of pillow possible, with lots of different colors and decorations. There were literally thousands of pictures, including some with what looked like bloodstains on them. I worked at a law firm, started getting calls in the morning that some random attorneys could not log in. When we checked out their computer, it turns out that they were ignoring their username, which was defaulted to the last user logged in. It turned out someone was logging in as user library. Checked out the law library, and sure enough, a sticky note with the library username and password existed just above the monitor. This routine persisted for a few more weeks as I tried to figure out how to catch the culprit. Sure, I could disable the account, but then we'd never find out who's ducking into random offices surfing prawns. That was in the cache of the library user account name on the local machine. We used a startup script called Kickstart, highly configurable to do whatever you need it to do. So I added to the startup script to email the administration group whenever the library user logs in. First night, I get the email. Late at night, I call security and ask them to check our floor. Nothing too unusual. We ask them to check floors occasionally due to stuck open doors from positive airflow, etc. They replied back, all clear. Huh, weird. Okay. Second night, same story, nothing unusual reported back from security. However, the next morning I came in to a request from an attorney to help him log in. Same computer from the night before, default user, you guessed it, library. This attorney had poor eyesight. As I'm clicking away, checking out the browsing history our mystery library user left behind, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A couple of dabs of Elmer's glue. It's early, pre-coffee. What's an attorney doing with glue? Then I realize what I'm staring at. Not glue. I threw up in my mouth a little. Fast forward a week and it happens again. Email notification late at night, security called, also notice another attorney logged in a few offices down. I called him immediately and asked him to check the office where we just saw the library logged in. He checks and reports back a few minutes later. Nothing unusual, just a security guard. I just called security no less than 2 minutes before. No way they could get to the top floor in time to check up on our request. It was the security guard yanking on his brake. I notified the building manager the following morning. They pulled him in, questioned him, and he admitted his guilt. He was dismissed immediately. In short, public logon on a post-it note in the office. Someone used it to serve shellfish material and splooged on a desk at night. Turns out it was the security guard. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I placed my hand on the user's mouse and my hand stuck to it due to lubricant on the mouse. Computer itself could hardly function due to prawn pop-ups. My friend's mum. 7 antivirus programs installed. Internet Explorer has 6-inch tall of toolbars. I have to note that me and her son both have masters in computer engineering. He always tried to educate her, but she would just get mad. He gave up. The fact that she is still using Internet Explorer means that she was just a lost cause, sadly. 52 gigabytes of prawns, 1 terabyte of gore. I never touched that computer again.
1 terabyte of Al Gore? I had no idea there was that much.
I had a coworker that wanted me to come by his house to fix his PC. This was like 15 years ago. He takes me up to his bedroom, not too unusual. He was having internet connection issues. I was so focused on checking cabling to his modem, router, and other things under the desk that it took me a while to also notice next to the desk the camera on a tripod, pointed at the bed. It all clicked when I finally got the interwebs working again, launched his browser, and his homepage was some couples sharing special interest website. My grandma was having problems. I looked at her history and there was a crap ton of gang-clanging prawns.
Hey, she's old, not dead.
I work in a senior day center, but I used to do software development, so every now and then one of the other staff will ask me to fix whatever computer problems they're having. One time, one of the nursing assistants asked me to look at her laptop and had brought it in. I told her I'd look at it during my lunch break, different time from hers, and she said, fine. So I opened up the thing in the break room only to be confronted with a bunch of windows with very exposed pictures of her and her boyfriend, the topmost picture being his BBC. Fortunately, the only person in the room was across the table and couldn't see anything, but I noped the heck out of there. I gave her a bit of crap for potentially getting me fired, but it was kind of fun to have her squirm knowing what I'd seen. I lent a friend the use of my laptop for a 3-hour game of D&D. He used a site called Fur Affinity to download lots of Third Reich dog prawns. Drawings of Dobermen in those uniforms doing the deed with each other. When I confronted him, he said, "You'd think there'd be more German Shepherds." Not me, but a friend borrowed his lieutenant's computer while we were deployed in Iraq. Found a lot of inappropriate material featuring minors in it. Pictures of him teabagging other soldiers while they were sleeping, you know, the usual. Yeah, he's a level 2 unspeakable act offender now. A video of 3 guys helping a goat commit the unspeakable act on a person. They walked the guy out the door 15 minutes later. A customer brought in his old HP tower and it absolutely reeked. A smell I can't even describe accurately, but it would be something along the lines of decaying ball bag cheese built up after a week of not showering and high-intensity training. Anyhow, we don't work on it yet that day, but end up having to wrap it in garbage bags and duct tape every opening to stop it from stinking up the tech shop. The next day we came in and the bag was slightly open. The entire store stinks of this now, and we had to open all the doors and set up fans for airflow the entire day. We unwrap the PC and connect it to power, after which a green-orange flume of debris comes out of the power supply fan, making a smell that has the original stench seeming tolerable. As one brave tech gets close to press the CD drive button, as soon as he touches it you hear rustling, and as soon as the drive tray opens, it was literally like you see in horror movies. A river of cockroaches pouring out of the open mouth of this PC. We yanked the power cords and ran it outside, as well as spending the next 4 months trying different kinds of extermination to get rid of the infestation in our store. It was so bad an event that the entire store full of introverted and non-confrontational techies managed enough bravery to call the guy up and actually tell him how unacceptable it was and that he needs to get his crap and leave. The guy responded, "Oh, it's not that bad really," but didn't give up much of a fight other than that. I can't even begin to imagine how awful of conditions this guy must have lived in to have a PC this bad. I don't even know how the thing functioned. This was even worse than the guys we caught with underage prawns, which we were required to report to authorities for you sickos that think that's okay. Similar story, we had a guy bring a PS4 that wasn't working into my store. We had pretty much accepted that we couldn't repair it, but he wanted his game out of it. We broke it open and found a nest of roaches. Quadruple bagged that crap and told him he needed to take it away. I worked at a repair shop as well. I don't know what it is with PS4s, but something about them attracts cockroaches. I've seen multiple PS4s with cockroaches and no Xboxes. No computers either, just PS4s. While I was in high school, I also worked for the school district as a student computer tech. My English teacher said her friend's computer was acting up and they wanted some help. After some general tinkering with settings, dumping caches, defragging disks, and uninstalling some bloatware, I determined they could use a clean install of their operating system. So I started to copy all their files to an external drive and was prepping a new partition to install the OS on. Well, you know those neat previews of the files you're transferring? I started seeing nothing but weird 80s clown prawn. Yeah, did I mention I was doing this at my school too? Ended up just locking the computer in a closet for the remainder of the file transfers and configured the computer with all their files and pretended I didn't see a thing when I gave it back. A neighbor asked to have their son's computer looked at because it kept blue screening. I agreed and braced myself for a bunch of prawns. The kid was 14. Nothing. A crap load of video games, but not a crustacean to be seen. What kind of 14-year-old boy who owns his own PC doesn't have prawns? The kind of 14-year-old that knows it's possible to stream his various shrimps and lobsters and not have them saved permanently to your computer for people like you to find. Seriously, I mean, who the frick downloads and saves their aquatic invertebrate these days? Honestly, at the age of 14, I didn't have this kind of sea-dwelling fauna anywhere on my personal PC. That's a later teenage thing in my head. A friend of my dad asked me if I could take a look at their family computer because Windows kept complaining about running out of disk space while there was nothing on there. I took a quick peek and indeed, not much going on. Barely any programs installed, no games on the C drive. There were some games installed on Steam through their 16-year-old son, but he was smart enough to place them on a second drive. Videos folder completely empty, picture folder empty, documents looked fairly clean. So I download Windowstat, and to my surprise it finds nearly 175 gigs of data in the documents folder. At this point, I already knew what was going on here, and I told the dad who was standing beside me that it would take a while, so he offered to go and pick up some food for us, 3. His son was home too, and left. There was a folder for save files from GTA 3 with 175 GB of images hidden in it. 175 gigs of exotic prawn, nicely organized in multiple subfolders by name, type, etc. I moved the folder in its entirety to the other partition under some random name and had a little chat with their son. He was so embarrassed but promised me he would keep them somewhere safe from now on. I just told the dad that there were tons of log files being generated by some app that didn't work right, and kept it at that. I used to work at the Apple Store, and one of my co-workers was running a diagnostic on an iMac and found 100 gigs worth of illegal material featuring minors. The store contacted the police and a sting operation was set up. He was arrested at the store and later convicted. The co-worker needed to take some time off, though, as he had 2 little kids and was pretty traumatized by what he saw. Freshman year of college, a few of us were hanging out in one of our dorm rooms and we got on the subject of music. The guy who lived there mentioned that his roommate listened to some really weird techno kind of music, but it was actually pretty cool. So he got on the computer to try and find it. They were friends and they got along well, so he knew the password. Anyway, he got his external and it turns out the guy has tons of music saved. Eventually, we see a folder called something in German, so he decided to check it out, thinking it might be the techno music. What we found were about 20 to 30 pictures of the same undressed guy. Some of them were with women and some of them were just him by himself. But the shocking thing about it was that his eggplant was at least 10 inches and it was curved a complete 90 degrees to one side. Not like a tight right angle, but it tapered around and the tip bent to face completely to the side. We confronted him about it, and apparently he had a bunch of prawns saved on there, and he had just stumbled on this dude somewhere and thought it was weird, so he saved a bunch of pictures of him. In short, college dorm mate had a thing for huge, bent wangs. We found his stash and called him Curvature Joe for the rest of our time at uni. He had a folder on his computer entitled Barely Regal, devoted to racy photos of Sarah Ferguson, former Duchess of York. Was helping my mum with something on her phone once, did the thing to open all the apps running in the background so I could close them. Saw an undressed picture of her that she probably sent to her boyfriend. And I'm ruined. I recycle work computers frequently for the next employee that they get assigned to. So many prawns. According to my grandfather's search history, he likes fat old B-words. Truth be told, I was just glad that his searches were age-appropriate. What's the most unprofessional thing a doctor has said to you? It wasn't so much something he said as something he did. I came in for a suspected broken leg and he had a couple of residents with him. After the x-ray and having already found out my leg was indeed broken, he grabs my leg and looks to the residents and says, "An old but reliable method for diagnosing a broken leg is to place a hand on the ankle, a hand on the knee, and place your knee in the center, then pretend like you're trying to break a stick. If they yell, their leg is broken." He actually fricking did it to me 3 times to teach these residents. I haven't been back to him since.
Bro, I would have punched him if he'd tried that crap. I'm not a violent person, but he's literally talking about pushing a broken bone with his knee. That's bullcrap.
Dude, that's only part of it. The whole reason I had to go to him, family doctor, is because the hospitals screwed my stuff up. The day I broke it, I went to the hospital and had it x-rayed. They said I'd just bruised the bone but didn't break it. They sent me home with some meds and that was that. Well, 1 month later, it was still hurting just as bad. So I went to the doctor from my original comment. Like I said, he diagnosed my broken leg. I'd been walking around on said broke leg without a cast for 1 month. It even grew back crooked. I even paid the hospital $500 for their x-ray. I guess the moral of the story is that if you're a 240-pound man, don't play on rope swings. Well, F me sideways. I got an x-ray of my back and hips. The doctor's first time seeing them was with me in the room. These words, folks, is how I found out that my back was broke. To explain, one of my legs is shorter than the other, so my hips don't align. Anything involving moving my hips since I was a kid has basically made the base of my spine grind against itself. By the time we figured this out, my L4 and L5 disc had nearly degenerated to nothing, and my sciatic nerve was basically sitting there waving at everyone without any protection in that area.
Yeah, I had something very similar when I broke bones in my elbow. The radiologist asked if I could straighten it out. I told him I couldn't, so he snapped a couple of x-rays. With a look of horror, he exclaimed,
"Holy frick! No wonder you can't move it. Just keep it still till we can get the orthopedic surgeon on call." I had a leading allergy specialist say to me, "Well, I'll be effed if I know," after a lengthy investigation over several weeks into my post-nasal drip issues. He'd tried everything and was all out of ideas. I didn't mind at all, in fact, I rather appreciated his honesty. It's probably quite telling that a lot of these in a row are just doctors using the F word to underline the fact that they haven't been able to diagnose. And yeah, I'm fine with the language to state the irritating nature of the problem. Another commenter agrees. Similar thing happened with my father-in-law. Men in that family have huge heads and thick necks. Not fat, just structurally over-engineered. He was having neck pain and went in to get a surgery consult after seeing other doctors. The doctor comes in for the consult, takes one look and says, "If my head was that big, my neck would hurt too." My father-in-law fell over laughing and they had a great working relationship from there on out working through the recovery. The doctor was doing a pap smear and he said, "Whoa," at one point while the speculum was in. I never did find out why, but I'm assuming he was just amazed by my awesome lady parts. "I need you to be fully firm," referring to my wang. I was referred to a urologist for Peyronie's disease. I believe my Johnson had been developing a bend in it. As part of his assessment, the urologist gave me an injection in the named part and some adult magazines. He left me alone in the room so I could become excited. Then he returned and used a toy to make me fully firm. However, when I told him I was on the verge of arriving, he just kept going and I splooched. Then he took some measurements with plastic rulers. He said that he needed to do this to take reference measurements to see if my condition is worsening. I have no idea what measurements he took because I was frankly overwhelmed by the experience. For him to look at my stiff eggplant didn't seem completely implausible. After all, I couldn't see a problem unless I was at full mast. Getting me fully firm, well, that was stretching my credibility. And when he kept going until I arrived, that just didn't make any sense. I asked about this on an online urology forum and found that this is so far outside of ethical practice that nobody would take me seriously. They assumed that I was just trying to share some fantasy I'd created. Nobody believed that a urologist would act this way. I'm not gay, and if I was trying to create a fantasy, I could probably do much better than him. I'm so sorry he did that to you. There is no excuse for doing that. He betrayed your trust and disregarded your dignity and wishes. I don't know what the legal boundary is, but this feels like he could be fired for that. You didn't consent to that, and there was no appropriate reason for him to have done that. Please report him. Don't worry about whether they believe you or not, which is out of your control. If anyone else reports him, your reports will back each other's up. I just wanted to add, and you probably know this, that this was completely his fault. You trusted him to behave professionally. He shouldn't have used the toy on you. He should have left it with you, stood outside the door, and said to let him know when you were ready for him to examine you. I'm so sorry you experienced this. Went to a psychiatrist because I wanted to self-delete. He said, "Well, you don't seem sad, I can't really help." You know how to spread 'em. I was at the gyno's office and needed to open my legs a little more in the stirrups during the examination.
Wow, that's inappropriate.
My mom's first gyno appointment with an elderly male doctor, she didn't really want to open her legs to him. He said,
"You really think you've got something down there that I haven't seen before?" He turned out to be a really good doctor, and my mom uses the story to remind me to not be embarrassed of crap that everyone has. Not said, but done. I was at the pediatrician having a physical. A youngish, probably late 20s to early 30s, attractive to my brain, blonde woman doctor gives me a physical. It comes time to turn my head and cough. I have become excited in anticipation. She does the whole check for hernia thing, then just before telling me I can pull my pants up, she flicks the head of my wang down with her finger, springing it like a dive board. She smiles slightly and continues on with the rest of the physical like nothing else happened. I don't know if she was trying to make my 12-year-old mind feel at ease about the embarrassing, to me anyway, situation, but I've never forgotten about that moment. During my first physical at about the same age, my female doctor counted my testes, saying, 1 thingy-dingy, 2 thingy-dingies, probably trying to put me at ease, but it was so weird and out of place. Look, I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to call you on my phone later on this evening and we'll discuss options off the book. It's my personal number, so I would appreciate it if you kept it to yourself. Highly unprofessional, but hugely helpful. Best doctor I've met, for sure. Is that unprofessional? I had a doctor who knew I suffered from terrible allergies and sinus inflammations every spring, and I was getting married. She scrounged around for pharmaceutical samples of anti-allergy and sinus medication for me, and of course didn't charge me for them, and gave me her personal number telling me to call her over the weekend if my symptoms worsened, and she'd see what else she could come up with. Turns out I didn't need it. The stuff she gave me worked great, but I appreciated the gesture. Didn't occur to me that this was unprofessional. I thought it was just going above and beyond as a doctor. I would say get a vibe check if you do get an offer like that from a doctor at the very least. That kind of situation could easily be taken in a very different and much worse direction. I'm glad it worked for both of these people. I had a positive pregnancy test and went to my OB to get a blood test confirmation. Standard practice is to repeat the blood test after 48 hours to see if your HCG levels have doubled, which indicates the pregnancy is progressing normally. About 10 minutes before my second blood draw, I received a call from my OB's office. Since I was already in the hospital parking garage at the time, I decided to just go into the office to see what the call was about. In the waiting room, full of patients, a nurse decided to tell me that I was going to lose the baby, and they called me because they wanted to save me the trouble of getting my blood drawn. I made her draw my blood anyway, knowing that there was no way they could diagnose that with only half the information. Then proceeded to walk out of the office in tears in front of everyone who'd just heard what she'd told me. Sure enough, my numbers had doubled. They unfortunately continued to fluctuate after that, which indicated that I was not having a miscarriage, but an ectopic pregnancy. Undiagnosed, an ectopic pregnancy can lead to serious complications, including rupture of the fallopian tube, internal bleeding, and potential death. I continued to go to that OB because my doctor was amazing, but that nurse is on my crap list forever. That nurse deserves to be fired. If everyone heard her tell you about the miscarriage, that's a massive privacy violation, in addition to her being horribly callous and an idiot. Did you tell your doctor about it? Because I'd assume most good doctors wouldn't want someone like that on their staff. I did tell my doctor about it in regards to the confusion it created, but in all the stress and turmoil of getting a proper diagnosis and treatment, following up on what happened to her was the last thing on my mind. My doctor was incredibly sympathetic. I haven't seen that nurse around the office since then. This happened back in January, and at about 18 weeks into a viable pregnancy at this point, I've received really wonderful care from the staff that I've interacted with this time around. If I do happen to see her roaming the hallways, I might just chew her out and blame it on the hormones. When the doctor told my dad that he had cancer in various spots, including his bladder, colon, lymph nodes, and prostate, my mum started crying, obviously. The doctor sneered at my mum and told her to get a grip. Fricking butthole. My dad's okay, by the way. Well, you're sitting here talking and smiling, you can't be that depressed, said by my psychiatrist a few years ago. Yeah, frick that. It's not hard to learn to slap on a happy face in public so people stop asking questions. I did it for years. Right? That was probably the third thing he said to me. He hasn't even asked me a question other than, "Why are you here today?" I've had the worst luck with shrinks, too. Repeatedly asked if I could be pregnant when I was like, I have messed up periods, yo. I'm a lesbian and in a committed relationship with another woman. There's no chance in heck I could be with child, stop asking. My endocrinologist, I have hypothyroidism, is trying to figure out the messed up periods, but I've had them for ages. I badly burned my hand in the college cafeteria and went to the campus health office. I showed skin literally dripping off my hand, begging for a cream or bandage or anything to ease the pain. After making sure I wasn't allergic to anything, they asked if I was doing the deed regularly. I wasn't, but didn't see how that was relevant to my burned hand. She then moved on to my current medications. I was on an asthma inhaler, ADD meds, and birth control. She looked up at me with a smug grin and said, "Alright, well if you aren't doing the deed with anyone, why are you on birth control?" as if she had caught me. I yelled back in her face while clutching my blistered hand, "In case the mood strikes me. Now, If that part of my life is out of the way, can you fix my hand? Women are on birth control for a lot of reasons. My ex was a virgin and took it because it relieved her cripplingly painful periods. Some women get irregular periods. That nurse is a C word. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My doctor is also my best friend, and I routinely have to get surgery because of a medical problem. Once when he was cutting into somewhere that I couldn't see, he said, "Oops." I was dating a girl for a while, and we both went to the doctor to get tested for transmitted diseases. When she was done, the doctor grabs me and brings me into the room. We chatted for a bit, and he says, "You know, I probably wouldn't date that girl if I were you. When I was in the army, I was dating a girl. One day she calls me and tells me she had chlamydia. My tests came back negative. I was on the phone with the Navy doctor, and he said, 'You know what this means, right?' Yeah? Your girlfriend that you were in a monogamous relationship with had a disease and you didn't. Yeah, I get that. Let me rephrase. She got it from somewhere that wasn't you. I got it. I'll deal with it. I mean, that's inappropriate, but looking out. Folks out there fall for the old, 'I caught it from a public toilet or a bus seat' all the time. I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. In my mind, it might not transgress boundaries by saying, your partner has evidently got this from someone that wasn't you, but telling them to break up is outside their jurisdiction. It's not cancer, you don't need to get this checked out. I got it checked out. It was cancer. A psychiatrist told me that he didn't have time for my craziness. After lying to me for weeks, telling me that I was on the waiting list for therapy when I wasn't, I found out when I went to the psychology department that I'd been discharged without a letter to me or my GP. Next time I saw my psychiatrist, he asked me how it made me feel. I told him that it felt like no one cared and just wanted to do me off and tell me what I wanted to hear rather than check to see if what they were saying was even true. The psychiatrist said to me, "That's just your depression making you feel that way." No, you butthole, it's 7 weeks of you telling me I'm on a list and saying you've been checking it yourself when clearly you hadn't. Anyone would feel fobbed off. I was booked to discuss possible knee surgery with a specialist. After several years of physio and many MRIs showed an old injury is not improving. So after a long wait where literally 30 or more people who enter the waiting room after me get seen before I do, I got in the room and the first thing he tells me is that he saw I was next and then deliberately delayed my appointment by 4 hours because other patients were easier to sort out. That's what he actually said. So I was already teed off. He genuinely thought I should be okay with an extra 4-hour wait and no apology at all. Then he can't remember which knee is the issue. I told him and he glanced at the scan and said, "Well, I understand women sometimes feel much more pain than men, but this is probably healed now anyway." Healed. Despite causing issues for 7 years, it's now probably healed. He asks if the pain impacts my life. I listed all the hobbies I've given up, the trips that have been ruined, the flat shoes I had to wear as a bridesmaid because I couldn't walk in heels without crying, and he nods along. So I ask him if I need to take my shoes off for the exam, and he says that's not necessary. He had seen my notes and doesn't think my knee has any problems, because if it did, I'd need a wheelchair. Excuse me? I was in that room less than 3 minutes. He didn't look at my leg. He told me if it still hurt to go up and down stairs and collapsed when I tried to do squats in a year, he'd have another look. I rang my doctor immediately. I was furious. She looked over my notes. He wrote that the patient is fully healed and the injury does not affect her in any way. He actually wrote that on my medical records next to a week-old MRI showing 3 massive tears in my tendons and abrasions on the bone. Yeah, magically healed. My doctor wanted me to go back. I've told her I will never speak to that man again and we're figuring out what to do now. One of the doctors in military recruitment post, military service in Russia is mandatory by the way, that's important, looked at me and said something like, "Okay, you're fine," and writes down in my file that I'm healthy. I'm like, "Excuse me, ma'am? I recall having pretty visible scoliosis for my entire freaking life. You might want to consider checking my previous check record from 2 years ago in the same freaking file you're holding." To which he replies, "Oh? Well, it seems to be gone now. This is usual when teenagers grow up. Russian recruitment posts are truly miraculous places. Hundreds of thousands of diseases were cured there in just 1 or 2 health checks. Don't worry, eventually it will curve enough that it will go straight again." I just turned 15 and was getting a throat swab. The male doctor noticed that I'd lost my gag reflex and told me not to worry because it would come in handy for certain adult activities. I looked confused, so he repeated himself with more of an emphasis on adult. No, I wasn't confused about what you were implying, you idiot. I was confused about what made you think it was a good idea to say it. I'd known the doctor for years and he'd never said or done anything creepy before or since, so I let it slide. Saw a doctor to discuss a bout of depression I was going through a few years ago, and his diagnostic was, well, obviously it's got a lot to do with your face. Yeah, I've got some bad acne scarring, but what a crappy thing to say. Yep, that's one heck of an opening statement. I'm not sure anyone likes to begin a conversation being told they're ugly. Is there any other way to interpret it, or am I missing something? When I was a young teenager, I had a lot of problems with ovarian cysts and had several surgeries to remove them. I woke one night with severe pain and was taken to the ER, where an unfamiliar doctor performed an ultrasound to see what was going on. He was gruff and cold towards me. I was understandably nervous and afraid and feeling vulnerable when he jabbed down on my abdomen with the ultrasound device and remarked loudly, "And here we see the scars from getting your child removed at the clinic," in a very judgmental tone. I'd never had that procedure, and I was just in shock and sort of laid there, silently crying, too afraid to say anything. I wish I could have had the guts to say something at the time. To think that this man was dealing with vulnerable, scared young women, the mistakes he must have made and the things he must have said to other girls, just sort of breaks my heart. What kind of doctor thinks that procedure leaves scars on the lower abdomen? I wish you could have kicked him in the throat, partially for being a jerk and partially for being incompetent. I'm not sure. I was a frightened kid in a lot of pain, and it was more his condemning tone that rattled me. This was more than 20 years ago, and I still think about all the things I should have said. When telling him one of my symptoms was that I couldn't do number 2, he said, "Oh, people all over the world get constipated." I had a bowel obstruction. My friend has always been paranoid about getting diabetes since both of her parents have it. She's rail thin, never had an overweight day in her life, and does long-distance running, karate, and yoga. One night, she realized she was seeing halos around any light she looked at. She asked her doctor to check for diabetes, and he laughed and said she was too thin to get diabetes. She said it ran in her family, and he said that it didn't matter, she wasn't fat, so she didn't have it. Her symptoms didn't go away, so she finally went to the hospital and demanded a blood test. She had freaking diabetes. If she wasn't so aware of the disease, who knows how far it would have progressed before her idiot doctor finally tested her. An ambulance took me to the ER of the local hospital after I was snuck up on and beaten about 30 to 40 times by my now ex-wife with a steel rod. The back end of a Colt gun, to be specific. The doctor who examined me in the ER was a very small, older Filipino woman who barely looked at my injuries and was more interested in telling me that I had no reason to be there. "You're a big, strong man. Why you not stop her? Why you not run away? You're fine, lady no hurt man." When the forensic nurse came in to take the photos for the police report, the doctor shooed her away. "He doesn't need you. He's fine. He's fine." She refused to take x-rays or do a CT scan. I was hit in the head a few times and sent me home with no medication or follow-up instructions. I found out later when I got myself to a real doctor that she broke the law by not allowing the forensic nurse to do her job, and that I should have had x-rays and a CT scan because I had 3 broken ribs, a separated shoulder, and a skull fracture that caused some brain injuries. As far as I know, she got no reprimand or punishment for it, and the judge allowed my ex-wife to plea bargain down to offensive touching because of the lack of forensic evidence. Just the other day, I was getting my 20-week scan and the doctor said, "Looks like baby has a cute dinky little nose, unlike his mom's schnoz." It's not so bad, but I'm a little conscious about my big nose, so I thought that was rude. But I'm glad the baby doesn't have my nose. Another time I was in hospital for a miscarriage, and a nurse had to clean up the blood and she loudly said she'd rather be in the nursery than doing this. That was heartbreaking because me too, B-word. My GP had a weekly checkup with my father for years due to him having heart issues. Simple assessment to see if everything was stable. He saw him every single week. He saw him losing about 10 kilos, 24 pounds, as well. Never advised a single extra thing and said he was fine. That was until we forced my father to go to the hospital for a detailed checkup. But the GP says I'm fine, where he passed away a week later. He was in the terminal phase of lung cancer. A freaking lung cancer that had been eating away at him for months, yet the GP didn't even bother noticing anything. I still can't believe this. I went to get checked for transmissibles after I was a victim of the unspeakable act. She was asking me about the experience, if I knew the person, and if anyone else was home. Yes, it was a family member, and one person was asleep upstairs. She asked me why I didn't scream to wake up the person, with a matter-of-fact look on her face. Yeah, you're right, I should have done that. Stupid me for letting it happen. B-word. I never went back there. I was refused birth control once because apparently it's a decision my husband needed to be present for because we could want kids. Nothing permanent, just birth control. Jesus. 2 occasions, same moron doctor. I was like 12 and I got a skin infection in my back, and he just blatantly told me that it was that disease where fish have to eat the dead skin and that it had no cure and it was going to get a lot worse. Being a kid, I was heartbroken by that, especially when told in such a blunt way. Anyways, my mum took me to another hospital and they were shocked at how dumb the other guy was. Obviously wrong diagnosis, it was something really easy to treat, and how he could just blurt that out to a kid.
What's the pettiest thing a parent has complained about to their kid's school? For silly fun at the end of the term, I showed an episode of Mr. Bean. He was washing his clothes and pulled out a dress accidentally and put it on. That is what the parents were mad at, that I was encouraging cross-dressing. They were seniors in high school, by the way.
They were seniors in high school, and now they're an all-cross-dressing, traveling cabaret. And that's your doing, you wonderfully corrupt show business pixie.
In my college gender studies class, the first big paper could be skipped if you cross-dressed for a day. I only know 1 or 2 people who chose to actually write the paper. My brother is a high school teacher. He had one kid that was early accepted into college of his choice and decided that his entire senior year could be the frick you all year. My brother had multiple conversations with the parents throughout the year about the fact that the student was failing, as did other teachers. Parents seemed very unconcerned by this. The day before classes ended, my brother runs into the father out in public, and the father says to him, "I'm very concerned about the students, really. I think his school performance this year doesn't bode well for how he's going to do in college." My brother said, "Your son isn't going to college. He has to repeat at least 5 classes this year in order to get his diploma." "What? No, he's already accepted." "Yes, but that's all conditional. Without his high school diploma, which we've been telling you all year he's not going to get, he can't get in." The father, who has a college degree himself, was apparently shocked by this news, and then promptly went right to the school board trying to get his entire senior year waived because he was obviously such a strong student that a school accepted him on early admission. The school board did not agree. The counselors at my school have this big meeting for all the seniors after the typical early admissions date, where they tell horror stories of people getting rescinded. It works pretty well. Parents once complained that I let my 7th grade intermediate ESL students read a story that was a whole 22 pages long, with images for their book report. They had more than a month to read it. It was an edited copy for their level.
How could you monster? 22 pages is too much for any child.
Honestly, even as someone who speaks their second language on a daily basis, the idea of reading a 22-page book is kind of daunting to me, even if I could do it in, a day or so. But I am a dummy, and it's probably good for an official curriculum for these kids. I hate parents that prevent their kids from testing their limits. The first year living in the US, I had a social studies final assignment on the Civil War. It was a total of about 20 essays, each about a page long, double-spaced. Not extremely difficult for your average student, but it seemed impossible to me and other kids in my ESL class. I'd taken English classes before moving to the US, but I would compare it to an English speaker taking Spanish 1. You can say hi and ask for a bathroom, but you can't really have a conversation with anyone. I was the only kid from my ESL class that managed to turn in the entire assignment. Both my ESL and social studies teachers were impressed. I'm sure it was crap, but I felt so proud to have completed it. Most of the other kids in my class took advantage of the circumstances and turned in 2 or 3 pages max, since the teacher had said to turn in what we could because she understood we were in ESL. I witnessed a parent complaining at the end of a primary school concert that it wasn't fair that their child had no discernible musical talent and that the school should stop giving instrument lessons to kids who were keen or talented. I've never seen the music teacher genuinely speechless for so long.
My special snowflake can't play a triangle, so nobody gets to play a triangle.
She was angry that her child got lice in elementary school. Apparently, it was all my fault that her child got infected. After they got the lice out, the mum was adamant that her daughter not be hugged by anyone, or that she shouldn't get too close, but also never specified what too close actually was for me to attempt to enforce. All this so that she didn't get infected again. This is first grade. Trying to keep kids away from each other is like herding cats. This same parent complained to me that I was calling her child by a shortened version of her name, that the child asked me to use. These are just from this year. My kids all got lice in elementary school last year, and I still didn't blame anyone. I just muttered while combing out their hair for like the billionth time. I hate lice. I have my students wash their hands before lunch. Apparently, I'm being unrealistic with my expectations. Get effed, Dawn. Back when I used to teach, I had a parent once complain that my classroom was too quiet, and as a consequence her daughter and her peers got too much work done, and they felt it was bad for their daughter's brain to be learning so much so quickly. Even worse, I had to sit in a meeting between them and my head of faculty to discuss it. Multiple times, my head of faculty had to clarify that they were actually complaining that their daughter was being taught too well. I bet it just made the parents insecure that their kid might be smarter than them. A parent called to complain that I hadn't put her daughter's late homework into the gradebook yet. I told her, I can't put the homework in the gradebook until she actually turns it in. This parent just kept asking me why I hadn't put it in. I kept replying with, I have nothing to put in, she hasn't given it to me. Finally, the call ended with, ugh, some people just don't know how to do their jobs. For everyone saying I should just put in a 0, I would have if I'd been allowed to. The school didn't allow teachers to put zeros in for assignments until the end of semester. So instead, I called parents every time there was an incomplete assignment and reminded them that it would become a 0 in a few weeks. Occasionally, I would put in a 0 for a few days to scare a kid into getting an assignment done, but only if I knew that it would work. My cousin, who teaches kindergarten, had a parent complain to the principal that she was irresponsible for being selfish enough to have a baby and take maternity leave before the end of the school year. Most of my colleagues who are mothers have heard a version of this. Last year, a parent complained that I was missing school too much, and it was negatively affecting her child's learning. My mom spent a month in the hospital and died. I missed 8 days. I had a girl in an honors class. She earned a B+. The mother asked if she could be bumped up. Cases where it's pretty darn close to an A, I'll consider it, but she was at the low end of a B+. During the semester, she changed classes and is now in the same class with a different teacher. She didn't ask to be transferred, but that's just how her schedule happened to work out. I got an email 2 months later from the parent telling me how much better the review packets are that the other teacher gives, and how the other teacher spreads apart the test dates to be more comfortable for the students, and that the student was doing much better in the other class. She asked again if I could change the grades to an A. Those would be valid criticisms if it were not for the fact that I gave the exact same reviews as the other teacher and we scheduled tests on the exact same day. On top of that, I asked what the student currently had in that class. Oh, B+. Oh my god, she tried negging you. I wonder if she thought because she herself was vain enough for it to work on her that it would work on you. Gosh darn, focus all your vitriol on your kids if you want them to pass, parents. Or maybe it's a good thing that all this toxic stupidity isn't directed at their offspring 24/7. My mother's a high school teacher, and this is one of her stories. The kid turns 18 and joins the military. The mother goes ballistic, storms into the school, yelling at everyone, well, just the staff, saying that this was all the school's fault, that he was corrupted into joining and things like that. Demands to talk to the kid's teacher, my mum, and my mum says, this seems like a talk you should be having with your kid, not me. The lady goes ballistic again. Mum has to call the AP to escort her out of the building. After hearing that, no wonder the kid wanted to join right after high school. One of my students was the child of a co-worker. Both were huge pains in the butt. Co-worker's mother stormed into the class after school to complain that her son had earned a C+ or a B-, I can't remember, on a homework assignment the week before. She was upset that I hadn't contacted her. I explained that I always immediately entered grades into a system that parents had access to online. Parents could view grades and that school calendar, etc. The school employee who maintained the site? It was her. So she knew how to use it. The co-worker's mother demanded that I contact her personally whenever her son made less than an A, and got upset when I said that I wouldn't. I told her I didn't have the time, I had the work of 2 teachers. An email wouldn't take long for me to send, but I didn't want to give myself yet another thing to remember, then risk getting chewed out for forgetting, and risk all of the other parents wanting the same useless courtesy. I said I'd contact her if I noticed a trend of slipping grades, which wasn't the issue with her son. His grades were great overall. This teed her off no end. I said that accessing the site took the same number of clicks it'd take to access an email about the grades, so there was no point. She cried, yelled, and kept pushing and threatened to take this to the principal, who was her best friend. I finally said that if I could keep track of all the grades for the 3 grade levels I taught, surely she could handle keeping track of grades for one kid. Just one incident of many with my beady-eyed witch of a co-worker. This reminds me of a parent I had to deal with just recently. Her son is a good kid, but not a good student. His grades are terrible. His mother emailed me saying that he isn't responsible and asked me to email her the agenda and homework personally every day. Luckily, I have a class website, which they were told about, and upload the agenda, homework, and handouts daily, and just referred her to the site. I still can't understand how she thought that was a reasonable request.
I guess that's easier than having a conversation with her kid and helping him become responsible. The bottom of a T. She wanted me to force her daughter to write the letter T as it appears in typing. She scheduled a parent-teacher meeting about it. Did you follow her instructions to a T? No, I told my boss that I'm not a calligraphy teacher and I didn't attend the meeting. The situation seems to have resolved itself. The color of red pen I use. Apparently it's too dark of a red to be considered red, and if I can't do my job properly using the correct red, I'm unqualified to teach. A dark red pen? I can't believe that people like you are allowed around our children. What if the children see it and confuse it for blood and grow up to become vampires? Ted Bundy only killed people because he couldn't get over the fact that his grade 4 teacher used too dark of a red pen.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A parent complained to a teacher when their child fell on the playground and the clothes got muddy and scratched up. They wanted the school to pay for new clothing. They fell on the pavement which had mud on it since it had rained the day before. The child also didn't hurt themselves, they just got the clothing dirty and scratched a bit when he fell. I had a screaming parent in my office because of a marginal comment I made on an essay that had received a grade of 95%, submitted by a student who was top of the class. The comment said, and I'm paraphrasing here, "This argument is unworthy of you. Don't be lazy. Find better sources and don't hang your argument on idle assertions." The parent claimed I had called her daughter lazy, idle, fat, mentally ill, and unworthy of being a student at my institution. She actually thought I was threatening to have her expelled or at least barred from grad school. The best part? The girl was a second-year undergraduate. The next best part? It was an open office and my colleagues were openly mocking her the entire time. I just sat there and said nothing. I miss those guys. Just to be clear, because of potential pronoun confusion, the female student had no problem with the comment and was absolutely mortified by what her mother had done and seriously concerned that the interference would damage her academic career. I just laughed and told her I was even more impressed that she'd emerged intelligent and sane from a home environment like that, then asked if she needed any letters of reference. She did, and she got them. Her mother got a vaguely insulting note and a small tray of milk chocolates. It seems infinitely more fun to be a professor or doctor purely in that you have a lot more leeway to be sassy to overbearing would-be authority figures, especially once you have tenure. I did a class Secret Santa with my choir. Before they were allowed to draw names, they had to bring back a signed form from the parents promising that they'll actually buy the other child a gift. This is 8th grade. One girl didn't buy a gift. I called the parents twice. Both times a mother told me in a worried voice that didn't inspire confidence that yes, of course she'd get a gift. She never did, so one kid in class who signed up never got a gift. Her mother went absolutely ballistic. Called my principal, insisted we had to make this parent go get her child a gift. I'd already planned to go out and buy her child a gift with my own meager salary, but she told me I wasn't allowed to do so because I had to make this other parent do it. I told her I can't drive to this other parent's house, drag her to the mall, and force her to buy a gift. I simply can't. It's out of my hands. My admin backed me up. She continued to rail at me for another week. I stopped doing Secret Santa after that. My mum was accused of doing witchcraft in the classroom when she told her kids a chant to make a snow day. The chant can only be done if the snow is in the forecast and the students get all of their homework done. The chant is, "Salami, salami, Bologna, let it snow." She just wanted her kids to do their homework. I had a parent complain that her kid was wearing a tight spaghetti strap tank top because the kid got hot and took off her sweater. The mum yelled at me for what she dressed her kid in. Because the conversation went like this. Daughter gets in the car with the parent not wearing the sweater. "You wore that to school? Oh my god, mom, chillax. The teacher said it was fine. You're overreacting." A parent went to the school district over the fact that I wouldn't let her come into my class because she wanted to give her daughter a bracelet that would have completed her outfit. This was back when I taught the 3rd grade. A music student of mine refused to sing one of her lessons in class because she had difficulty reading her bass clef. Her parents came to complain that it's not fair that I'm singling their daughter out because how is she supposed to know this clef? Well, this is her final year in solfege, so... Not replacing the novel the entire 9th grade was assigned with a novel more aligned with her Mormon values. What was the novel in the syllabus and what was her demand? I need closure on this lunacy. The absolutely true diary of a part-time Indian. It has a bit of racy romantic content, which was her main issue. I was teaching 7th and 8th grade at a Catholic school, and a group of mums came in and complained that their sons were distracted by my butt and that I needed to do something about it. For the record, my teaching wardrobe is variations of conservative dresses straight out of the 1950s. Most awkward meeting ever. What do you even say to something like that? Yes, I shall deflate my butt in consideration? I basically said that, actually. I refused to push the review test and subsequent lessons after the test back because her parents wanted to take her out of school for a week to go on vacation. This was about 2 weeks after the winter break, mind you. Only have so much time to teach the entirety of World War I. They couldn't wrap their head around it and kept saying that I was trying to make it so their kid failed. My wife teaches at a school that uses Class Dojo. It does a lot of different things, but it is essentially a behavioral management system. She can give kids points for doing the right thing and can take points away if they do the wrong thing. The parents who sign up for notifications get them sent straight to their phone or computer. She had one student this year who was refusing to do work and was being disrespectful to the student teacher. She was basically telling the student teacher that she wasn't really a teacher and that she, the student, didn't have to listen to her, the student teacher. My wife overheard what was going on and took away a point for disrespect. The girl's parents came in the next day and the dad was demanding that my wife change the disrespectful point. He didn't mind that his daughter lost a point, but he was teed off that she lost a point for being disrespectful. He told her that a 7-year-old isn't capable of disrespect and insisted that this was going to ruin her chances of getting into Stanford because they would see her as a disrespectful person. My wife explained that this information is simply a way to track behavior and communicate with the parents. It has nothing to do with a permanent record, it's just an app. The dad continued to demand that it be changed and my wife eventually relented. She changed it to a refusal to work point instead. I'm not sure if Stanford thinks being lazy is better than being disrespectful, but the dad seemed to think so. My mother forced me to go to my 6th grade social studies teacher and ask her why I'd missed half a point on a 16-point assignment. That's 97%. I assume your mother's logic went something like this. Failed life must achieve through children. I had a parent try to excuse her son's lack of homework completion as too hard for little boys. It was identifying nouns in a Year 9 class. At my old school, a parent complained to the principal that her child's punishment was too severe because when he exposed himself in class, it was just the berries and not the twig. That I gave their child a detention for saying something foul in Spanish. I guess they just didn't like this gringo calling their child out for the stuff they were saying. Admins caved to the parents and I was less than amused. Not a teacher, but I recall that my daughter's 2nd grade teacher got in trouble with another parent during the Iraq War by referring to Saddam Hussein in class as Saddam Insane. That parent was anti-Bush and anti-war and assumed that the teacher was some kind of right-wing Republican. I'm not sure of the teacher's politics, but he was an African-American gay man. The controversy blew over pretty quickly. This was in San Francisco, so yeah. Not a parent, but a college student. She told me she deserves to get rounded up to an A. Now, she had a lot of absences, never participated in class discussions, and didn't improve at all over the course of the semester. Oh, and she also had an 84, 5 points away from rounding range. When she wasn't rounded up, she sent an email saying that she didn't care about the class. She cares about getting into medical school, a dream that I've now ruined. She signed the email, "Your grace will be rewarded. Karma." When I was in middle school, I got something like 8 or 9 hours of detention for some stupid thing I did. My mum kept telling the teacher that it was not enough and that he should increase my detention time for 1 whole month, that I know of. I still pity my teacher. I dread awards day as an elementary school teacher. I had a parent complain that their child didn't get an academic award. I made sure that every child got something, whether it be for an academic subject like reading, writing, math, social studies, or science, or just for their awesome personality. I can't remember what her child got, but it was one of those personality awards. He was a very cheerful, sweet kid, but she said that this award sent the message that academics weren't important or that he wasn't smart. With over 120 kids in that grade level, it was impossible to give everyone an academic award. He had a chance to win one. If he read a certain amount of books, you would win a reading award. But you actually had to keep track of that at home and turn the paper back into me, which he didn't. So I'll just say that this wasn't the first time she'd complained about something petty that year. I once had a parent accuse me and the admins of a conspiracy against her daughter.
I had her in my class period and she always skipped, so I always marked her absent. She couldn't believe that her precious snowflake could be skipping. A parent from a rival school once complained to my teacher that I was too big to be playing 6th grade basketball. Must have been held back a few years, were her exact words. Joke's on her though, the teacher was my mum and promptly informed her that I was the youngest kid in my class by several months. I just had a tall father and a very early series of growth spurts. I got chewed out for expecting a 12-year-old to be able to read an analog clock. What's the scariest thing you've seen that no one believes you about? It would help if I had pictures to explain the setting here, but I used to fish at an abandoned houses pond near my home. Next to that property was a wealthy neighborhood of about 6 houses, mansions. One day, while getting off the bus, I saw a black Mercedes with fully tinted windows, which is rare in New Jersey, sitting in the driveway of the pond house. I found it odd and was kind of sad because I thought I'd never get to fish there again. The next day, I found out the man who lived at the end of the wealthy neighborhood had been shot in the head while he slept. Rumor has it he was involved in the mafia. I believe those rumors. I was sleeping at my cousin's house on New Year's Eve 2014. My 3 cousins, brother and I all decided to sleep in the same bedroom as our parents were staying out all night. We were old enough to stay at home on our own. The point is we were 100% the only people in the house that night and all slept in the same place. Woke up the next day and was getting in the car to leave when I had to look at my camera roll from the previous night. To my absolute horror, there were 5 photos of us all sleeping. Every single person was in the photos fast asleep, so there was no way any of us took those pictures. My aunt showed the photos to the landlord and he had no explanation. To this day, nobody knows who took them. Oh boy, this is a scary one. Do you think it was the landlord? I'm assuming he'd have the key. Maybe he'd have known the adults were away for the night. Yeah, not hard. Most phones allow you to use the camera without unlocking it. And if he left his phone on a table or something, then easy enough to use it. Right after high school, class of 91, I got a contract job with the Forest Service. We traveled all over the West doing gopher control in replanted clear cuts. The gophers would eat the tender roots of the newly planted saplings, and we had to control them to give the trees a chance to get started. We were returning to our hometown after a long job in Oregon, driving across the desert near a government lab. It's about 3 a.m. and we're going at about 80 in a 55-mile-per-hour zone. Suddenly, a semi-truck, completely blacked out, no lights at all, bombs past us on this stretch of highway like we were standing still. Then, 2 army-style trucks also blacked out. Scared the crap out of us. We got back to our hometown and told several people what we saw, and no one would believe us. I still think they were doing freaky crap out there in that desert lab. If we'd tried to chase them or anything, we probably would have disappeared. In short, freaky blacked-out government trucks from a secret lab blew past us in the dark. I've never even heard of something like that, but that's just the thing. You wouldn't hear about something like that. You got a fleeting glimpse at something very secret there. My uncle used to live in Nevada near an Air Force base, and he saw stuff like this all the time. He said the scariest one was a blacked-out semi his hopped-up muscle car couldn't keep up with. Crazy stuff out there. No telling what goes on. My dad had top-secret clearance in the Air Force base and still clams up and gets weird about UFO stuff and secret tech. See, I'm not a big believer that there are aliens being hidden in Area 51 or anything, but stuff like this is absolutely riveting. What's being developed and being shipped around under the cover of darkness in these definitely not Secret Service mobiles? When I was little, 7 or 8, I woke up one night to a white dog sitting in the doorway of my bedroom. That was weird because we didn't have a dog or any other indoor pets. While I watched, it got up and went down the hall towards the living room. I got up, looked down the dark, empty hall, and went the opposite direction to my parents' room. I woke my mum up and told her there was a dog in the house. She got up and we looked, but didn't find anything. She thought I was dreaming. At some point when I was older, I found a picture of the dog my parents had when I was a baby. I learned from my mum that the dog often slept in the doorway guarding my room. But the dog died before I was 2. The dog in the picture was the dog I saw that night. In college, I had a summer internship in a national park that had just ended a wolf reintroduction program. A number of interns were housed in an area of cabins clustered together on a 1-lane gravel road. I was staying in a different area of the park and had gone over to the cabins for dinner one night. I left pretty late, close to midnight, and was enjoying the quiet walk down the road to my car. It was a clear night with a full moon, and the conifers growing on either side of the road shaded it almost entirely. As I'm walking, I see a light-colored shape on the other side of the road coming in my direction. I kept walking slowly, and as we drew towards each other, I saw that it was an enormous canid of some sort. Far too big to be a coyote, but as far as we know, all the wolves had been relocated. We each kept our pace, and it never turned its head or anything, just kept walking. I somehow managed not to pee myself, but by the time I got into my car, I was shaking so hard that I could barely get my key in the ignition. Everyone I've told thinks I was exaggerating, but I was stone cold sober, less than 10 feet from it, and that animal's back was up to my waist, easily the biggest dog creature I've ever seen. To clarify, I did see it clearly in the moonlight when it was close. It had the coloring and general characteristics, like a narrow head, snout shape and ears, of a light-phase coyote, but the bulk and size of a wolf. Larger than any Great Pyrenees I've ever seen. Looking back, it was definitely a benign encounter, just two folks out for a stroll, passing each other on the street. Was this by any chance at Yellowstone? Only asking because I visited there several years ago, and we became friendly with a waiter in a restaurant who told us about the huge wolf that they have that wanders the park. He said he saw it once and it was nearly twice the size of a regular wolf. He also said it wasn't aggressive or anything, just looked at him for a bit before walking away. I'm not sure about any relocation programs in Yellowstone, but it sounds like it might be the same wolf. Doing a service call on an apartment, and this lady has an obvious obsession with dolls, like those 15-inch tall Pioneer-looking dolls. She's not home, so I go about my business, very uncomfortable, and even more so when I enter her bedroom. She literally has more than 300 dolls with doll heads tied to strings from the ceilings, and a small little altar-like thing in the corner of her bedroom, with a severed chicken head and gargoyle-like statues and pictures of children. There's a pig's hoof hanging from a red cord in her bathroom. When I got to the dining room, there's a Ouija board and multiple dolls all arranged around a dismembered doll that's drenched in what I think was blood. I think I broke the human top speed record that day, and nobody believes me about it. It was probably voodoo, and Wazir had performed a blessing for the children in the photo. Spend some time in Haiti, and the old woman would do this with photos of people they cared about. The goats and chickens throw most people off, but it was probably a caring grandma just doing her ritual to make sure the kids were safe today. Maybe that isn't what's going on, but I'd just tell myself that. For my own sake of being able to sleep tonight, I'm going to assume that all the stuff was fake and she was messing with you. One day I walked into my leather couch ripped open. I lived alone. My mum and I were driving through rural Missouri late one night. It was dark and hard to see much beyond the headlights. All of a sudden, something scampered across the road in front of our car. We didn't hit it, but when it got to the other side of the road, on the shoulder, it sat up on its hind legs, turned around and looked directly at us. It had a long, thin tail, too thin to be a foxtail, too big in general to be a squirrel or possum. To this day, we both swear it was a monkey. People don't believe us, but the way it turned back and looked at us once it got to the other side of the road was so chilling and human-like. Based on the size, shape, and movement, it could only be some sort of primate. My mum used to yell at me to close the pantry door, and one day when I was home alone, I got a snack and left the door open. As I was walking away, the door slammed shut and I heard a voice say, "Close it." Quietly but intensely. I swear I literally grabbed my dog and ran faster than I've ever run before up to my room and locked the door. Let's just say I literally will never forget to shut that damn door again. Can you imagine being so slovenly that even the ghosts in your building start telling you to get your crap together? Talk about a wake-up call, man. I once walked into my living room to see a football that I've never seen before lying in the middle of the room vertically. It fell on one side where I guess it noticed me and proceeded to roll into the kitchen behind the counter and out of view. After standing there from awe and confusion, I went to look for it and it wasn't there. Never saw that again. In high school, I briefly dated a gothy chick whose idea of a good time was to hang out, and occasionally make out in the old graveyard at the edge of town. Not my favorite thing in the world, but she was cute and I was 16, so there you have it. One night she told me to meet her there. The place was dark and empty as always. I had my phone flashlight and was poking my way through the headstones to the tree that was our usual meet-up spot, when I saw some movement in my peripheral vision. Turned the light to where I thought it was in time to see a silhouette move behind a headstone about 30 yards away. I was sure it was her trying to scare me, which sometimes she did, and I called out to her, and in response I heard a female voice, but not hers, call the same name back to me, like it was mocking me. I turned and sprinted back to the road. I texted her from my car. She said she hadn't left her house yet. I cancelled on her and drove home. In my hometown, in Massachusetts, there's a colonial-era graveyard where I used to enjoy walking at night. I saw an odd-shaped gravestone that I didn't remember seeing before, much lighter color than the others, and as I got closer it seemed to be moving. I was really intrigued. Got closer and it was two people screwing. Oops, wasn't even that late.
My friends and I used to frequently visit the abandoned Joseph P. Ladd School. It was rumored to be haunted. Most of the time I just assumed the noises were other people on the property. I'd never experienced anything supernatural there, just, scared because of the circumstances of what could happen. One of the last times I was there, I brought my crowbar because the state had started boarding and welding doors shut. So here I am trying to pry open a small enough gap between these two doors. There was a good 6-inch space between them where it was open. After a few tries, I'm getting pretty aggravated, saying to myself, is this freaking worth it? It was pretty well late night and the moon was really bright, so I didn't need my flashlight unless I was inside a building. Also, I didn't use it because of the risk of alerting security. So I'm peering through these two doors down this hall with my flashlight, and about 50 feet down the hallway, it looked like some light dust came into view. So the dust entered where my flashlight was aimed, and then suddenly, it turned. I could see the cloudy, barely visible outline of a chest, shoulders, and head. Nothing else. As it turned, I can still vividly remember what appeared to be the ghostly, misty outline of shoulders and a head moving towards the flashlight. So, as any person would, I ran away and screamed. Never have I been so scared in my life. New England is the best when it comes to spooky legends. Rhode Island has more legends than it does square feet. Lovecraft's quote sums it up perfectly. Searchers after horror haunt strange far places. For them are the catacombs of Ptolemies and the carven mausolea of the nightmare countries. They climb to the moonlight towers of ruined Rhine castles and falter down black cobwebbed steps beneath the scattered stones of forgotten cities in Asia. The haunted wood and the desolate mountain are their shrines, and they linger around the sinister monoliths on uninhabited islands. But the true epicure and the terrible, to whom a new thrill of unutterable ghastliness is the chief end and justification of existence, esteems most of all the ancient, lonely farmhouses of backwoods New England. For there the dark elements of strength, solitude, grotesqueness, and ignorance combine to form the perfection of the hideous.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe.
Was with a bunch of kids playing around the street when I noticed a floating stick. There's no trees around and everyone else saw it. Put my hands around it to make sure it wasn't a spider's web or a string, but it was definitely floating. The moment I touched it, it fell. Still can't explain it to this day. I was driving to South Dakota to visit family and I drove all night. Around 7 a.m., tired, almost 45 minutes to my destination, I looked east from the highway and deep in the plains there was this huge golden bridge silhouetted structure. Mended with the clouds and the sparkle of the sun, it almost looked like heaven. I mean, it looked small from the car, but I understand depth perception, and up close that would be a huge Golden Gate-sized structure. Looks like it stretched from north to south as far as I could see. Rubbed my eyes? Still there. I just remembered thinking, I'm tired as heck. I've driven this road many times and there isn't anything this way except grassy plains. Fast forward maybe a year or two, I'm back in South Dakota working for the summer with my family. One day for work we had to drive down the same road about 8 a.m.-ish when one of the guys goes, I remember this one morning, we were driving down the same road for work and this golden bridge-looking thing, huge as frick, was on the horizon over there, pointing to the east where I saw it years earlier. All of a sudden, instantly when he said that, I remembered that moment from years earlier. I remembered it because I thought I was hallucinating, but they described exactly what I saw. This is South Dakota, and there isn't a huge golden bridge-looking object anywhere in the state. It still baffles me to this day. I try not to think too much on it because I haven't seen it since. Weird as heck though. Every time I visit my family, I look to the east on that same stretch of road, but I haven't seen it again. My buddy and brother's evidence of seeing it only validated that I wasn't crazy and that they saw the same thing. I was about 4 to 6 years old and my mother was telling me to get ready for bed. I remember hopping on the bed and going straight for the window. I pulled open the curtains dramatically. I was face to face with a giant fly or moth head. Its face was staring straight at me and was huge, almost like a mask pulled over someone's head. I became hysterical trying to express what I saw and was told it was in my imagination. Now, this was in the window to the backyard. Our house was on a foundation above ground, so that window was about 10 feet off the ground. It's been over 17 years and I remember that creature staring back and the sheer horror of its eyes. Can't bring myself to look out the window at night now. My friend, I think you experienced whatever the equivalent of Pennywise was in your area, and you really need to get the heck out of there before he comes back after his long sleep. When I was 17, I was up late one night watching a movie in my living room. I was living in a condo at the time, a smallish building, only 3 stories, so not a lot of people. It was mostly middle-aged people and in the nice end of town, so we rarely heard noise from neighbors, especially late at night. So the movie ends and the credits roll. It's about 2 a.m. I'm playing on my phone and the condo is pretty quiet. Suddenly I hear a noise coming from the front door. It sounded like a long nail or claw slowly dragging across the door, and then a soft tap tap tap. This repeats several times. Meanwhile, I'm crapping myself. It was the most eerie, ominous sound. I felt like I was in a horror movie. I was too scared to look out of the peephole because I thought whatever it was might see my shadow looking out, as lights were on near the door. Who knows what they want? I'm not out here trying to die. The horrible scratching noise carries on for about 30 seconds and then stops. 20 minutes later, I got the guts to go and look in the hallway and nothing was there. And no marks are on the door. I still get the heebie-jeebies thinking about it. When I was 3 or 4 years old, I had a best friend named Abigail. We did everything together. Played in the sandbox, creeks and rivers, playgrounds, you name it, we were sidekicks. I even drew her portrait one day and told my mum to save it somewhere safe so I could give it to her on her birthday. I still have it somewhere, but I drew a girl with dark shoulder-length hair with a red bow in it. She was wearing a blue jumper-like dress with a long-sleeve red shirt under it, and brown shoes. I just remember I loved playing with her, and then one day I just never saw her again. Now, if this were my mum telling the story, she would just say that at this age, I was an independent little girl who liked to play and be by myself. She just thought Abigail was an imaginary friend. Until one day, when I was about 11 or 12 years old, the local historical society posted a researched historical article detailing the events of a tragic farmhouse fire that happened about 75 or 80 years prior on the property that our subdivision was built on. The fire was a devastating one in which a family of 6, 2 parents and 4 kids, were all killed. One of those kids was a 4-year-old and her name was Abigail. A picture of the family was included in the article, black and white, but you could clearly see the little girl had dark shoulder-length hair with a bow in it and was wearing a jumper with a long-sleeve shirt under it. To this day, my mum still refuses to believe my best friend was probably a ghost. My brother-in-law had an imaginary friend when he was very young, and he is absolutely convinced to this day that she's a ghost. He said they'd play together all the time, and even though he had 3 older brothers, he preferred to play with her. He recalls her waking him up in the middle of the night to play football with him in the hallway outside his bedroom, and he would always get up and play even though he knew he would get in trouble for it, because if he didn't, he said she would sit next to the bed and cry. She wore a red dress and little black shoes. He also remembers the last time he played with her. She told him she would have to leave soon and he wouldn't ever see her again. He was devastated and asked her why, and she replied that he was getting too old now. He's a big, super strong, no-nonsense, kind of intimidating guy these days, but when he talks about his little friend, he gets very serious and emotional. It's real to him. I used to live in an old 3-story row house with my father, mother, and older brother. It was fairly typical in that it made some old house sounds and had some areas that never really saw natural light, like the staircase and downstairs hallway. It was a pretty normal place, but in the late 80s, my father self-deleted. Over the course of about a year, we had a multitude of unusual happenings in the house. Most things small, shadows moving and objects not being where you left them, but some things, borderline violent, happened too, like an old lamp exploding and doors slamming shut. I was primarily the person who saw these things happening. That leads me to the biggest incident. I've told my mother, my brother, and some friends, and now my wife, but no one thinks it happened the way I remember it. I was 9 years old. My father had been gone for almost a year. I was sitting on my bed reading when a young man, maybe in his late 20s, looking disheveled and confused, opens my bedroom door. Startled, I shout, "Mom! There's a guy in my room!" He stood there for a second and looked straight ahead. "What do you want?" I asked, and he walked straight through my room and through the wall that connected to the neighbors as if he was immaterial. Immediately next door, I heard a scream of blood-curdling terror from my neighbor. She was screaming and crying loudly, and you could hear physical commotion. I kept shouting for my mum, who came in and comforted my crying and terrified 9-year-old self. I told her what had happened, and she could hear the screaming next door. She went over to the neighbor's house to find out what was going on. The neighbor's husband opened the door. Turns out his wife had just in that moment of screaming found out her brother had self-deleted. Now, I'm nearly 40 and I don't talk about these times very often. I don't know what it was. I don't know if I was crazy. I don't believe in ghosts. Looking back on those times, a lot of things didn't make sense. My family never really saw or experienced things on the same magnitude I did, so I've kind of kept it quiet. A light.
I was alone on a forested, snow-covered mountain and there was a bright light just sitting in the middle of the trail. It was there all night. In the morning, there was nothing there. This is one of those horror movies where you're thinking, frickin' seriously, dude? You're going to investigate the spooky light? Of course there's a monster there. Don't go over there, you dumb idiot. I'm glad you didn't go check it out and get eaten. But I also want to know what the heck that light was. Perhaps next time, just have a quick look with your binoculars or something and report back to us. Listen, you started off sounding smart, but everyone who's seen a horror movie knows that if you look through binoculars, a monster will jump right up in front of you from nowhere while you're looking and jump scare/disembowel you. A white, smiling face at my window as I was laying down for bed. It was glowing as if it were a light source, and it had no nose that I can remember, just slits like a snake. Eyes had no color, just black pupils. Its mouth was wider than any human's. No hair either, and the height from the ground to my window is about 8 feet, and it was perfectly at eye level. My mother checked all around and there was nothing, but I swear to God I saw it and it was a person. She still teases me about it from time to time. When I was about 7 or 8, my neighbors had walkie-talkies and we would all play with them in the neighborhood and talk. For some reason, I changed my station because I couldn't hear them anymore. Then an older gentlemanly voice comes on and starts talking to me. He was telling me he was my uncle and his daughter was crying and he wanted me to say her name over and over to comfort her. Young me starts doing it and then I stopped because I freaked out. I ran and told my parents what happened and they didn't believe me. I've never touched one since because I know it was some perv getting off on it. I saw a UFO with my mother in Oregon one night. We were traveling when I spotted a triangle shape in the sky, formed by 5 bright lights. We stopped the car, got out and looked, and it's just hovering there, silently with no movement. I should have taken pictures or a video, but I was so caught up in the moment because I couldn't make out what I was seeing. Out of nowhere, this thing shot off into the horizon, faster than any man-made machine. We both remember clear as day, however very few people believe our story. What's the worst case of spoiled rotten that you've seen? My roommate is an application essay reader for a university's business school. He was just telling me about a kid who wrote his overcoming hardship essay about how he really wanted a boat because all of his friends had boats and it was hard for him to be left out. Then he overcame his hardship when his parents bought a boat. I guess his hardship wasn't a hard ship to get. Was at the Ford dealership getting my oil changed and killing time by walking through the big showroom. There's a Mustang GT350 sitting in the middle with a huge bow on it and folks gathered around waiting for someone. Minutes later, the family comes in with their son who immediately yells about wanting it in blue instead of black and denting the passenger door with a swift kick. The parents didn't even have money. He wanted new clothes and was told no, so he put his clothes in the bathtub and poured bleach on them. The parents brought him new clothes. Holy crap, that would have been a bleachy clothes-wearing dude if it was my son. Yep, the only way to get kids to realize that being a craphead isn't going to benefit them is to let them do it and deal with the consequences. Eventually, they'll learn that being a jackass doesn't pay off. In high school, 1987, this really pretty girl was about to turn 16 and her parents got her a fully frame-up, restored 65 Mustang. It wasn't what she wanted, so they got her a new Porsche 944, not the only one at my school. It was customized with rims and upholstery that had her name embroidered on it. When she graduated, they got her a new Lexus sedan. Her father was a preacher at a small rural church. Her mum was a stay-at-home trophy wife. Still have no idea how they pulled that off. I worked at a tax office and I can tell you that religion is a very profitable business. Sister refuses to look for a job and as a result moves back home. She uses my parents' vehicle to drive around with her boyfriend and go to parties and stuff. One day there's a family emergency and the car is not in the driveway for her to use. She throws a tantrum, trashes the house, and runs away with her boyfriend. By the way, my sister is 22 years old. That kinda sounds like the problem solved itself. A girl in my high school had totaled 4 cars by the time she graduated on account of crashing 2, flipping one onto someone else's lawn, and accidentally running someone else's car completely over. I have to be honest, 4 cars in presumably less than 5 years is almost impressive in terms of a person's inability to coordinate or learn from their mistakes, not to mention somehow not getting their license revoked. Okay, I've got one. My boyfriend's little half-sister. So her parents are real hippies. They live at least 40 minutes from the nearest town, which doesn't have much anyway. They live on an eco-friendly hamlet which her parents built from scratch. Since the age of, say, 10, she's now 16, my boyfriend's sister has been a stealer of money. Started off by taking coins when she was babysitting for neighbors, eventually finding out where stashes of cash were kept, and then the neighbors found out and told her parents. They were mortified but didn't do much apart from tell her off and make her promise she wouldn't do it again. Little things like that happened and same outcome. Then her granddad passed away, who left a share of $1 million to her mother, which was used to upgrade the farm, buy more land, among other things. She stole money from her dead granddad's wallet in his fricking pocket when he was lying in the house dead when no one was looking. All she got was a bit of a telling off. She never has to give the money back because she spends it first. Her parents just say, work it off by doing chores. Now she's 16 and her latest crimes have been stealing her mum's card to buy $800 of makeup online. Her parents took the makeup from her, hoping to return it, but not before she replaced the makeup in the boxes with old bottles. They let her keep the makeup after this and still let her do all her school camps and parties. The last I'd heard, her parents had started a B&B and made a couple of grand only to have it disappear because she found out their internet banking passwords, transferred it to herself, and then spent it on food, friends, and makeup all in one weekend before they could find out. Her punishment? Work it off by doing chores. It makes me sick. I had to do chores for free. I'm still doing chores for free in my own house. Fricking heck. I was in Toys R Us in the 90s. This mother and her daughter, who had to be around 12, were shopping. The girl asks if she can have some toy. The mother said, "No, we're here to get a gift for..." And the girl asked once or twice more and the mum declined. The girl then said, "F you, mummy," and took off running. The mother chased her, while the kid cussed her out. Eventually, it must have ended. I went to check out and the mother-daughter couple were behind me. The mother not only got the toy she wanted, but actually apologized to the daughter. That was my cousin Zach, but when we left Toys R Us, his dad made him give the toy to Salvation Army. He cried and I got yelled at for laughing. Okay, this is an opposite case, but it's a great counterpoint. I know a multi-millionaire chick, maybe 95 million in net worth. She's a friend of my ex-wife. We hang out with her on a semi-regular basis. At any rate, one day, years ago, my kid is playing some Game Boy DS shareable game with her sons. It's a game that my kid has. Her boys don't. They finally finish the game while the grown-ups are getting lit and eating way too much crab. One of her boys runs up to his mum and asks, "Can you get this game? It's really fun." She says, "Oh, money's tight. I'll tell you what, put it on your Christmas list. That's only a couple of months away, okay?" "Okay." And with that, all of the kids went downstairs to play whatever on the whatever device. I looked at her and said, "Money's tight?" She related the tale of how the kids have no idea that they have money. It was the way she was raised. She didn't discover the money until she graduated university. At first, she was teed off because her college could have been so much easier with money. But a few months after graduation, she started thinking back on how teed off she had been at the wealthy kids who just bought their way out of every problem that came their way, and how disgusted she had been at the way they lived their lives. She apologized to her dad and swore that she would raise her kids exactly the same way. She lives in a modest little house, and her boys wear sneakers until they destroy them. They will find out when they graduate college. Oh, this is one of my favorite spoiled kid comeuppance stories ever. I had a friend, Don, who had 2 kids, a year apart in age. When his son turned 16, Don was ready to give him his pristine Volkswagen. Don really babied his cars, so this Jetta, though about 7 years old, was truly in like-new condition. A car that most normal 16-year-olds would be thrilled to have. I would have been thrilled to have it myself. So Don tells his son the plan, and his dad goes, "Dad, I'm not driving that car. It's a 7-year-old Jetta. I need a new pickup truck." After taking a deep breath so he didn't throttle his son, Don simply said, "Well then, I'll drive the Jetta for 1 more year and give it to your sister when she's 16. If you want a new pickup truck, then you'll have to either ask your mother or buy one yourself." Now, Don and his kid's mother had been divorced for years, and through a series of bad choices, his ex-wife had barely 2 dimes to rub together. Don had gotten remarried to a woman who was very successful and a wealthy business owner. His son, very mistakenly, thought that Don and his current wife would foot the bill for whatever the son wanted. How very wrong he was. Fast forward a year, and his daughter was very happily driving around the Jetta. Don bought himself a brand new Mazda. His son has access to neither of them. In desperation, he bought himself a crappy $800 beater just to get himself to and from work. Lesson learned, I hope. I applaud Don for sticking to his guns and not teaching his kid to be an entitled butthole at an early age. A friend of mine is married to a very rich man. Old coal money or something. No one in the family has to work because they just live off investments. Anyway, she was crying one day because her mother-in-law was threatening to cut her husband's allowance and he might have to get a job. Cripes, I mean, don't get me wrong, I hate having to do stuff for a living sometimes, but having to do what the rest of the population does to continue your elevated style of living Shouldn't be this much of a dream crusher. There are some follow-ons to this comment. I want to know what these people do all day. I can understand not bothering with a 9-to-5 if you're filthy rich, but there are only so many Lamborghinis to crash and so many expensive substances to absorb in one's lifetime. Charity and socializing, I suppose. I know a guy who had a few homes his family owned and he had no wife or kids or siblings. Actually, some of his siblings had died tragically. He's not filthy rich, just comfortable, and has at best to do some repairs and find good tenants. So he doesn't really work. The tragedies killed his drive. He spent all of his time reading and collecting books, and he bought so many off of Amazon that they just keep sending him books for free to review. You know, aside from the tragedies, that sounds peaceful. He has what he wants and probably doesn't need to worry about it. Can't imagine what he'd trade for his siblings back, though. I was on my high school's newspaper staff, and we always did a section on cars in the parking lot, where we highlighted one crappy car and one super nice car, and then interviewed both owners. Everyone loved it, and don't worry, the crappy car owners were always super excited to be a part of it, and they always had the best stories. So we pick Snobette Snootyson because she's got a nice brand new Range Rover or something, and after I'm the last to call not it, I'm forced to interview her. What's your favorite feature of the car? Well, one time I forgot to put it in park and it started rolling away, but it didn't roll that fast, so probably that. Or my G-Easy bumper sticker. Have you got any funny stories about your car? Yeah, when my parents first got it for me, I was making faces at my friend and turned left when it wasn't an arrow and I totaled it, so they got me the same one again. I managed to sneak into the article. Snootyson has managed to keep her car undamaged since October. It was January when I wrote the article. When I turned 16, all I wanted for my birthday was to see the Blue Man Group perform. I saved my own money to pay for the ticket. I gave my mum the money, and I was really excited because my mum said she had the tickets and everything. My mum, my sister, and I all got in the car to go see the show. We arrived at the wrong place, and I immediately thought something was wrong. When I asked my mum why we were there, she said that my sister wanted to see O by Cirque du Soleil, so she just brought the tickets for that instead. I was so blown away that even though it was my birthday and my money, my sister had the final say over what we ended up doing. I refused to see the show and opted to walk through the casino the entire time instead. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I'll throw out the disclaimer that the guy wasn't a jerk, he was actually okay, but the stunning privilege was both jaw-dropping and hilarious. A Hispanic guy in college came from a pretty wealthy family. He'd never had a job before, which isn't really that crazy for his age and being a student, though I'd been working all throughout college. One day he decided to get a job because he was bored and wanted to see what it was like. I forgot where he got a job at, but it was a pretty laid-back part-time job pushing paper in an office setting. A few weeks after starting, we were hanging out and he's talking about work. He reached into his pocket and says, "Today they gave me this. What am I supposed to do with it?" It was his paycheck. I stared at him for a second and said, "My man, that's your check." "What do you mean, what do I do with it? You deposit it in your bank." He says, "I don't know what to do with that. My dad just puts money in there. I don't look at it, I just take money out from ATMs or use my card." Not wanting to walk the poor idiot through such an easy process, I just tell him to take it to a grocery store and cash it. What he said next made me nearly fall off the couch in disbelief. He said, "What do you mean cash it? Like they'll just give me money for this?" Must be real nice to have that amount of wealth. My employer's two sons have everything paid for, so they never have to worry about cost. They both have everything they want and need. One of them likes expensive shiny things, and he's always thrown fits until he got what he wanted, from what his dad told me. For Christmas, he wanted a $1,200 55-inch Samsung curved TV, even after his dad stated that his budget was $1,000 each. Also, wow, he threw fits and got mad at his dad, and his dad, being the wimp that he is, apologized and ended up buying it for him anyway. The son is 21 years old. When my brother broke off one of the rearview mirrors on my father's nicest car 2 days before getting his license, driving illegally because he couldn't be bothered with the 5-minute walk to the store on a mild sunny day to get a can of soda. And then he just put the car in the garage like nothing happened, and my parents brought him a brand new motorcycle so that he wouldn't be tempted to borrow the car anymore. I may have been worse, but this was in my family, so... When I was 15, I was dating this girl that I met at a coffee shop downtown. Her parents were loaded, like home movie theater wine cellar live-in maid loaded. The girl got a brand new Lexus for her 16th birthday. It took her 4 times to pass her driving test. A week later, she totaled the car, so they bought her another one. Her parents also flew her from California to London to go school clothes shopping. Went to school with a girl who got a 2012 BMW and literally cried and cussed out her parents because she didn't get a 2015. I knew one girl who got a hot pink Hummer for her quinceañera. Since she still had a year before she could drive, she decided to keep the Hummer for no apparent reason and got a Mercedes Roadster once she turned 16. Knew another girl who got a Mercedes G-Wagon for her 16th. She crashed it a week later on purpose because her stepdad bought it as an attempt to buy her love, and she caught him cheating on her mom. Don't know if that's exactly worth it. Recurring theme for the video is rich awful kids spurning more money than some grown hardworking adults have in their accounts just because they have no appreciation for money. So gross. In college, I knew a girl whose daddy was some big-shot banker or something, made enough that the wife didn't have to work and 3 kids could go to expensive schools with little financial aid. This girl didn't have to work during college and had all of her supplies and lodging paid for by daddy, and got to fly home every time there was a 3-day weekend, all on her father's dime. I once had to borrow $10 from her to pay for some food when we went out to eat. I promised I'd pay her back once I got my check next week. At the time, I worked for a cafe, and she seemed cool with it. Turns out she was not cool with it and promptly bashed me on her blog and to all her other friends, calling me a bad person and a thief. Because I borrowed $10, which I'd paid her back, by the way. I brought up the blog posts and she was very embarrassed. Last I heard of her, she's living in daddy-paid Manhattan apartment, working part-time as a receptionist at a yoga studio. She started a new blog about the struggle. Another instance, this was back in high school so the details are a little fuzzy, but there were 2 girls. One, the daughter of oil money, and the other, the daughter of a garbage truck corporation. They always tried to outdo each other. The oil money girl got a brand new Audi convertible when she got her license. Oh god, I knew the worst one. Big shot oil daddy, and she was the most insufferable human I've ever witnessed. Tried to brand herself as this super environmentalist hippie, but used all of her dad's oil money for weekly trips across the country, in private jets, with insane wardrobe and fancy dinners. I've never seen someone use money so frivolously while constantly social media preaching about all the earth has given her or whatever. Seriously, her Instagram posts are hilarious. An undressed picture of herself with her chest blurred out. As I'm soaked in the bright and glorious sun, I'm moved with gratitude. I give thanks for every part of my body for warrioring me through life and for simply being. Thank you, water. You are life. May we protect you as you do for us. For the past week, I've been deep in shadow. What a darker tone this is compared to the rose-gold clouds I normally drift in. I've leaned into the unknowns, and I've chosen to embrace it all. Pains, grace, peace. I am blissful. They just go on and on like that. Last I heard, she somehow convinced the school to let her do a special graduation program in Hawaii, and now her dad pays for her to live a gypset lifestyle, which if I understand correctly is just flying all over the world on insane dime, doing whatever you want? I was on a school bus as a senior. As we stopped at a house, there was a dead dog by the road. The little girl getting off said to her friend who pointed it out, "Oh yeah, we got him this weekend. My dad will just get me another one, so it doesn't matter." I'm from a rich area in Dallas, Texas, so I've seen some crap. I went back for a visit and my childhood best friend was complaining that her parents were only letting her go to New Zealand instead of Amsterdam. Again, her dad is a multimillionaire and both of her teenage brothers drive Teslas. My male best friend was complaining to me that he didn't get to go to prom in a Hummer limo, only a regular stretch limo. He looked like he was going to pass out when I told him that I missed prom in high school to work a night shift. I'm glad I don't know either of those guys anymore. New Zealand is awesome, so frick her, we don't need her here. Dated a girl who was given a brand new car for her 16th. She had it for a lot less than a year before she crashed it. Her parents brought her a used car. She had it for about another year before crashing it. They bought her a third car, used, and then when her brother turned 16, she pitched a fit because he got a new car while she had to drive around in her used car. So he ran her over, right? Last I heard, she went down on him. I'm not even kidding. I stopped hanging around that family about that time. She did it, and she told me she did it. As for the why, well, apparently she was bored. I don't know her personally, but I'm still friends with a guy who dated one of her friends. I heard this from him. We all went to a private, expensive school in the US. The spoiled, rotten girl got a degree in journalism and promptly moved to London to find a job. Her parents rented her an apartment and I assume paid for her life for about 2 years before she was forced to move back because she had neither looked for nor got a job while she was there. Once back in the States, she refused to live in her parents' house, citing she was a grown woman. How could this be expected of her? Her parents bought her an apartment in New York City. Last I heard, she still lives in that apartment without a job, but has moved because it's in crappy Brooklyn and not Manhattan. I'm an adult, guys. Now use your money to continue to support me in a new catered condo where I cannot lift a finger in peace. My mum had cervical cancer a few years ago and had a full hysterectomy. She was out of work for a while, and my brother and I had to work more hours and basically help out with the majority of the bills and groceries. My then-girlfriend at the time couldn't seem to understand why I wasn't willing to pay hundreds of dollars on a tux and prom stuff. She proceeded to ask me every day if we were going until I finally yelled at her and told her sarcastically that I was sorry my mum had a terminal illness and surgery to remove all of it, and that I was sorry I had to help out with paying the bills. She finally shut up about it and cried to her friends, literally cried at the school she went to, but told them I just didn't want to go. She totally left out the part where my mum was ill. I only learned that the other week when one of the people she cried to got hired at my job and told me what she did. We later broke up because she cheated on me and told everyone I hit her. I've never been in a fight in my life, and I'm afraid to hit anyone because I'm a wimp. I guess prom overrules helping my mum with her medical bills. Mum's been well for about 4 years now. The ex has moved on to have 2 babies, and she's not even 22 yet. I dodged a bullet. Ugh, my friend's dog. He used to barbecue a steak for the dog once or twice a week. Apparently the dog didn't like it pan-fried. The only human food my cat eats is roast beef, and only when my mom makes it. My cooking? He screams for it, and then when I give him some, he looks at me like I'm trying to poison him. A friend of mine saved up for an iPod when they first came out. Literally saved for a year to get one. His mum took him and his sister to the mall so he could purchase this. His sister started throwing a tantrum because she didn't have one as well. Their mum got so fed up with her that she bought the sister one just to shut her up. I've been that, brother. It really does kill you inside. Just to make everyone feel good, I had a fist bump moment at the servo with a dad which started out rotten and turned awesome. His son wanted a Kinder Surprise and the dad said no. So the kid threw a Kinder Surprise on the ground and said, "Now you have to buy it." The teed-off dad pays for the said chocolate and waits for the kid to hold out his hand with a huge smile on his face before throwing it in the bin and dragging the now screaming kid back to the car. Most satisfying turnaround I've ever seen. When did someone try to force a "it's either me or them" choice, and how did it go? It's me or the business. I'd lost my very comfortable sales job and I wanted to try being a self-made man. After 4 years of covering all of our expenses, house, insurance, vehicles, vehicle insurance, groceries, vet bills, gas, utilities, and recreation, so that she could pay off her school loans, she was unwilling to cover our bills while I tried. I had a big enough severance to still cover our bills for nearly a year, and enough savings to use half of it to go in $15K with my brother on startup funds and still have $15K in the bank. She wouldn't even hear it, said I couldn't do it and that I'd fail. It's been 7 years. Last year, my brother and I made $350,000. I left her and didn't look back. Nothing feels better than being told you'll fail and then proving that you won't. Not my story, but a story of a bird we used to own. A large cockatoo that my mum brought for my dad. Truth is, the bird ended up loving my mum more than anything and would scream at everyone else and pick out its own feathers over stress while not being with my mum 24/7. I guess cockatoos can get really attached easily. Who'd have thunk it? Got so bad that my parents ended up giving the cockatoo away to some family acquaintance. The guy loved the bird and would walk around town with it on his shoulder and stuff. Eventually, he got a girlfriend, but after several months, the bird was being jealous and a bit of a C-word to the girlfriend. The girlfriend had finally had enough and told the guy, "It's me or the bird." The guy picked the damn bird. Actually, what probably happened with your mum and the bird is that the bird fell in love with your mum and was getting jealous or protective over her when others would approach. This happens because if you pet a bird anywhere else than its head, it mistakes the petting for love and affection, and it causes the bird to perceive the other as a mate. Look it up if you don't believe me. My ex-girlfriend said I had to decide between her or my cats. She lost. One of my cats had a reaction to meds for a toe abscess and chucked up in her shoes, and she went ballistic. They weren't even expensive shoes, but old ones that should have been in the bin ages ago anyways. She objected to the amount of money I was spending on vet bills, my money and not hers, by the way. We weren't living together and didn't share any bills or finances. I'd had that particular cat since I was a kid, so there was no contest. He finally died last year just short of his 26th birthday, lying in the arms of my current partner who spoiled him rotten. In short, love me, love my cats. 26 is an incredibly ancient feline. The oldest I knew was about 20 and that thing was the most frail animal I've ever met. A very well-preserved kitty. Follow-on comment. My husband's cat is a complete butthole. She has never consistently used a litter box and hates everyone but him in a hissing, biting sort of way. After a few years of living with me, she's finally accepted me as well and is only somewhat nice. However, he has had the cat since he was a kid, over 15 years now, and I would never ask him to give her up. We do come to compromises, like she mostly lives in a crate so she doesn't make the house a mess, but it's a huge crate with platforms and things to play with. He has to clean the crate, but we both get her out so she can run around and get attention. I know one day she's either going to pass on or get really sick. We're prepared and we have a plan in place of what we can afford, and at what point we have to let her go. My point is, if you marry a man with a cat, you marry the gosh darn cat too. I told them to choose between me or their substance use. They chose the substances. She told me it was her or my car. Not in the normal sense of she wanted me to sell it. Money for me at the time was tight. I wasn't struggling but couldn't afford many luxuries and needed new tires for my car, but she wanted to go on a shopping trip. When I say needed tires, the fronts had turned into slicks. When I said I couldn't afford to give her money because I needed to put it into my car and explained to her it was a huge safety issue, she gave me an ultimatum. I chose my car and safety. My ex-wife once asked me to pick between her and our daughter. I told her she'd lose, and she ended up getting the help she needed with the postnatal depression. Good man. Also, that's great that she got help. Explain, please. Why was she wanting you to choose? I understand she had depression, but what exactly was she asking for? She either wanted to leave or for us to give up our daughter for adoption. She felt incapable of being a parent, and even after treatment, she didn't really bond with our daughter for several years. My dad's girlfriend witnessed me being bullied and mistreated by her brother and denied it for years. I told my dad it's me or her. I don't have contact with my father anymore. My dad came over and told me to choose between my fiancée and mother of my child or my family. I'm now married with 3 beautiful children and couldn't be happier. I still occasionally hear from my parents, but we rarely respond. I'm not the one missing out on my kids' lives, not my problem. To expand, my dad hates my wife for unknown reasons. He's made up every excuse in the book, from she's too picky to she's the reason I don't go to church. My family didn't start going to church till I was in 8th grade, and I stopped going sophomore year. I didn't meet my wife till junior year. He is selfish and has called my kids stupid. The last time I went out to dinner with them, he told me this great story about how he was telling a waitress that she should be my wife, and that there was just the small problem of my current wife, but she could be gotten rid of. He's just an awful guy who's really great at hiding his true persona from the rest of the world. I see through his BS, and he puts on a front to make everyone think I'm the butthole for not seeing him anymore. My wonderful in-laws have more than filled in for their absence. He also hates them and is rude to them. He told another waitress that I was dating some awful bride of Satan bimbo. Turns out that waitress has known my wife for 15 years. My wife is one of the nicest, sweetest people that I've ever met. She goes out of her way to accommodate others. My dad has basically convinced all of my local aunts and uncles and cousins that we're terrible people, so I never get invited to family events. So in short, Dad is a prick, my wife is not. I have 3 beautiful kids and I don't give an F about him. Either we open up our relationship or I'm breaking up with you. We opened our relationship and she broke up with me anyway. I need to test drive all the cars or that one car on the lot I like the look of before I sell the car I own right now. Can I do that for a few months? That's usually what ultimatums about open relationships mean. I'm not even against them, but people are seriously dishonest as frick a lot of the times they ambush people with them out of nowhere. When I was 4, my dad decided to buy pulped orange juice. I took one sip and was disgusted by the pulpy bits. My mum usually bought pulp-free for me. I told my dad I hated it, but he refused to get rid of it. I told him it was me or the orange juice. Next day, I came into the kitchen and in the fridge is a container of high-pulp orange juice. My dad walked in and told me I needed to get better at picking my fights. It's been almost 15 years, and even when I come home, he makes sure there's a bottle of extra high-pulp OJ in the fridge now. Joke's on him, now I actually like it. That's definitely one of the more lighthearted stories in this grouping. Also, I'm not sure if the joke is on your dad. It kinda sounds like he won. Anyone in the comments agree? I once had a best friend and a girlfriend who hated each other. While my girlfriend hated the dude, she encouraged me to be friends with him. The guy couldn't stand her so much he put me in the position where I had to choose one and say goodbye to the other. I've been married to the girl for 10 years and never talk to the guy anymore. Easy choice, much happier this way. I can't imagine having a guy friend give me an ultimatum over a girl. What the heck is wrong with him? We had a drummer, Scott, tell the rest of the band that it was him or me. They kept me and we renamed the band Scot-Free. It's either me or the beard. You'd better believe that I kept that beard. Not so much for the sake of the beard itself, but because making that kind of trivial ultimatum is a major red flag. Fun fact, the man with the world's longest recorded beard died when he stepped on his beard by accident and broke his own neck. I've legitimately heard someone on my team break up with a girl during a game of Dota on voice. He was using open mic and she was like, "Get off that stupid game, take me out to dinner," in this horribly entitled voice. After about 10 minutes of him being calm and saying things like, "It's okay baby, just let me finish this game, I'll get punished if I leave," and her just not understanding, she issued an ultimatum. "If you don't turn off that game right now and take me out to dinner, I'm leaving." And he just typed in chat, "Pause please, need to break up with my girlfriend." And everyone lolled and he paused and the guy just went freaking ballistic, like, "This is my apartment, you stay here on my dime, I buy you all your food, I give you money to go shopping. You don't get to issue ultimatums to me when you don't have crap without me. Get the frick out of my apartment, this relationship is over." Then it was lots of her crying and yelling and bringing up all this crap he did wrong in the past, as if that was going to help, and eventually he just said, "Sorry, relationship's over, I don't care. Bring a truck and one of those D-bag bar guys you love to go home with so much to get your stuff tomorrow. See if any of them are willing to clothe, feed, house, and do the deed with you." And everyone on chat just went, "Whoa!" And we were typing everything that was happening to the enemy team. He eventually got her out of the apartment and boy, did it sound like the guy had a world of pressure off his shoulders. After the game ended, I befriended him. We still talk on Steam sometimes. He really ended the relationship and ended up just putting all of her crap in a storage locker when she didn't come to get it for a week. He has a new girlfriend now who apparently isn't as awful. She made me choose to obey her every whim or she'd leave. Turns out it was a power play. I called her bluff. I chose life. My crazy girlfriend said I was obsessed with my GameCube and said she'd leave if I kept it in the games or sell it and she stays. Currently, I'm living a happy life with my GameCube, controllers, games, and my other consoles and games. I don't know what happened to her. Was her name Sega Saturn? I worked at a care facility where I couldn't keep my own personal cell phone on me, but would carry around a work phone as I worked with clients. My friends and family all knew that I was pretty unreachable when I was at work because of this, but for some reason my boyfriend couldn't understand it. He'd get annoyed at me for not responding to his texts or calls to the point he'd drive by and make sure my car was at work. He once left me a voicemail implying that he intended to self-delete since I wasn't there for him. He insisted in the message that I had to choose between him or my job. After I got him checked out, I broke things off as gently as possible. It wasn't so much that I had my dream job, but more that we didn't have an emotionally healthy relationship for him and his possessiveness was going to kill him. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Boyfriend wanted me to move in but was allergic to cats. He said I could either prove I loved him and was ready for an adult relationship by getting rid of my cats, or we were done. We'd only been dating for 4 months. I tried to explain that throwing out pets I'd had since high school was a jerk move that I wasn't willing to make after a few months. He said I was a silly child who loved useless, disgusting animals more than humans. We were done. I suppose it's hard to empathize with a cat if all they bring you is problems and itchiness. I'd hate life too if I couldn't pet any animal within reason. I tolerated even having the conversation because he told me he was allergic, which is a valid reason to have qualms about pets, but by the end I don't even think he was allergic. Just a jerk trying to pull a power maneuver. Years later, it turns out I'm allergic to cats. I laughed in my doctor's face when he told me to get rid of them. A girlfriend once told me I had to become a Christian or we could break up. We broke up shortly after that. Yeah, she would have to be a terrific lay to make me want to lie to myself like that, and ironically, knowing that she was that good at doing the deed would raise questions about the degree of her faith to the religion I was joining. Paradox. When I was 16, I got home from school, early release from my last block. My father was upstairs, in my bed, drunk, bottle in hand, and passed out. He woke up, and calmly I asked him to get up and take a shower, or I'm out. He told me to go and F myself, and proceeded to drink while talking and arguing with himself over some alcoholic, delusional bullcrap. Completely forgot my presence. I packed some stuff and called my very dear childhood friend to come get me. Her and her mother helped me buy a Greyhound ticket to get out of state to my sister's. About 6-hour drive to the south, but a horrible 12-hour bus drive. I phoned my sister when I was an hour away. Talked to my mum as she begged me to return. I emancipated shortly after and spent a year with my sister working and getting crap done. Only thing I regret is being the youngest while all my siblings moved out in a similar vein. I was the last resort for my dad's bullcrap. When I left, he focused on my mum. Things were always absolutely terrible for all of us, but since he no longer had a selection to choose from, the only person he could bully was her. She passed away 2 years ago from melanoma after a long, grueling few sick years stuck alone with him before moving out. I came back around and aided and took care of her during treatments and sickness until the day she passed. But still, man, I regretted leaving him alone to destroy her mentally and physically. Double-edged sword, I guess. Glad I left to save myself from that situation, but I still can't forgive myself for letting her go through that alone. One of my best friends said if you end up with her, we're done. He didn't like my girlfriend, and that was his good right. But try to force my hand and you'll have another thing coming to you. I've done that to my best friend. I'm talking best friends since diapers, like a brother to me. He was starting things up with this girl who had a reputation, substance problems, restraining orders, stealing from everyone around her, that sort of crap. I told him that if he was going to trust me on anything, it had to be this. Luckily, he chose me. She's now in jail for trying to kill one of her boyfriends. Not me, but my husband. His ex-fiancée is allergic to dogs and refuses to take medications her doctor suggested. She told him, "It's me or the dog." His dog is his number one love. He chose the dog. I'm really happy because then we met and I love dogs. So it's us, our 2 dogs and 2 kids, living happily ever after. College roommates agreed I could get a cat and then they changed their minds. The cat was behaved and used her litter box. They didn't give a reason but said she had to go. I moved out. It's either me or your dogs. I chose my pups. No regrets. My ex-boyfriend said it was him or my dog. He refused to move into my place if he was living there too. I chose my dog. He was potty trained and overall a good dog, but he didn't like my boyfriend and therefore my boyfriend didn't like him. My mum gave my biological dad's mum the ultimatum of either going to rehab and getting clean so she could see me when I was born or choose her smack. Needless to say, I have no relationship with my dad or his mum. Some guy I was seeing told me I wasn't ladylike enough. He said I swore too much, announced when I had to pee, called him dude, and generally acted like a guy. I guess he wanted me to change, but I dumped him instead. I met a chick that acts just like you. 10 out of 10 would marry again. Well, crap. Find me a man who thinks like you. There are dozens of us. Literally dozens. I gave my former boss an ultimatum once. I could either have a vacay or I'd turn in my keys. I hadn't had a single day off in over a year and worked nights, weekends, and holidays. I got the vacay. I pulled that once. My grandmother offered to pay for a trip to Europe to make up for past offenses. Never missed a single day of work. Was never late, always worked overtime. Hadn't even asked for a raise in 2 years. The plant was going to be shut down for a week and a half during Christmas, and I wanted an extra week and a half after that break, unpaid of course. I asked for that in August. He delayed until October when I said I was going and just needed to know if I'd have a job when I got back. I had a job when I got back. Not me, but a mate and I were playing Warhammer 40k. His girlfriend was there being bored, they wandered off and she gave him the ultimatum. It's either 40k or her. He came back in and she didn't. What is a mere mortal woman compared to the glory of serving the God Emperor of mankind? I can kind of get this actually. At this point, I have such a critical mass of wargaming miniatures and terrain that giving up my hobbies means losing or at least selling literal thousands of dollars worth of stuff. Regardless of whether she was worth it, it's just such a hassle to give a major hobby that you've had for years up. Also, who would force me to give up something that brings me so much joy? I've had 2 superiors tell me that if my wife ever told me to choose between the military and her, pick the military. You being home more often will aggravate the problems you have, not fix them. Source? They're both divorced now. I've always stood by, if you're the one that makes me choose, then you're the one that goes. I told my best friend she could either hang out with her new friend or me, but she couldn't do both. Her new friend was a mentally unstable former roommate of mine who attacked and threatened everyone in that apartment with a knife before being committed to hospital for several months. As soon as she was released, she came back to school, found me and my friend, and became fixated on spending time with my friends and going to the school clubs that I went to. My best friend told me that anyone who dared give her an ultimatum like that didn't deserve to be in her life. I just shrugged and explained that her new buddy put me in therapy and I was considering a restraining order. I was sorry, but I wasn't willing to allow that girl back to my life. She threw a fit about how dare I say something so manipulative. She spent the next week trying to trick or force me into going to social events where both of them would be. I went no contact with both of them. A year later, my former best friend tracked me down to apologize that she didn't know how crazy and mean my old roommate could be. She wanted to patch up our friendship, but by that point I didn't trust her anymore. That's pretty lethal to any relationship. A few years back, my mother said if I continued dating my girlfriend, it was proof I hated her. I guess I must secretly hate my mum because I ended up staying with my girlfriend, now wife, who is a saint and is literally loved by everyone else in my life. I didn't mention that my mother has severe issues, but perhaps you could figure that out. Needless to say, I don't come around very often. I was at this party a couple of years ago in the backyard in the city, and everyone got quite wasted. We were out on the street as well. When this group of kids, 10 to 12 years of age, came up and threw water balloons, yeah, I know, at us, and some of those that didn't explode we threw back at them, which obviously made them mad. An hour or so later, I came into the backyard from the toilet downstairs, when I saw almost everyone from the party gathered up, and then one of the big brothers to these kids, around 25 years old, we were 16, had his hand on this girl's face and was pushing her up against a wall. And obviously, I wasn't just going to stand around doing nothing, so I pushed the guy away, and as he started to leave, he flew back and threw a forceful punch right at my face. So I went out for a few seconds and stumbled back. I had this liquor bottle in my hand. All I could think of was smashing it against that fricking idiot's head. And I started approaching him when my crying girlfriend, who witnessed everything, came up and blocked me, and obviously, as drunk and mad as I was, I kept saying that I wanted to smash him with that fricking bottle, and that's when she said it was either her or the fight. And obviously, I knew she said it to keep me out of trouble, and I loved her, so I picked the first. I had a friend who was saving me, even though she had a boyfriend, and chasing off girls who showed any interest. I started dating someone without telling her, and was given the choice between her, my at the time best friend, and my new girlfriend. Needless to say, choosing my girlfriend was the best decision of my life. We're still dating 4 years later and are as happy as an oyster. I have one real hobby, a live-action RP, full-contact boffer sport called AmITheA. Every weekend, about 40 or 50 of my friends and I get together and hit nerds with sticks. AmITheA was my only social interaction and is a damn good workout to boot. The girlfriend got jealous of me skipping out for 5 hours every Sunday. "I don't think there's room in your life for AmITheA and me," she said. Oh, honey, I don't think you're going to like where this conversation is heading. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.